Everyone at First Baptist Church called Patricia a blessing from God, a saint who walked among us in orthopedic shoes and floral print dresses. At first I thought she was just a devoted caretaker, the answer to my daughter's prayers during a difficult time. But when my 5-year-old grandson started begging me not to leave him alone with her terror swimming in his eyes, I decided to trust my gut instead of her reputation. I installed a hidden camera inside a teddy bear in his room. I expected to see neglect, maybe some harsh words. I was wrong. What that camera recorded was not just abuse. It was a cold, calculated dismantling of a human soul. I can never unsee it, and I can never forgive myself for not seeing it sooner. My name is Elijah Thorne. I am 70 years old, a retired structural engineer, and a man who has spent his entire life believing that if you build a foundation strong enough, the house will stand. I was wrong about that too. I built a life of dignity and hard work, raising my daughter Jasmine to be strong and independent. But now I was watching the foundation of her life crumble under the weight of a man I never trusted and a woman everyone else adored. Before I tell you how I tore their house of lies down brick by brick, please let me know where you are listening from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to fight a war to protect the innocent. The engine of my old Ford truck was still ticking as I walked up the driveway of the sprawling colonial estate my son-in-law Hunter had bought 3 months ago. It was a cold, sterile house in a gated community where I was usually the only black face for miles. I didn't even get a chance to ring the doorbell. The heavy oak door swung open and something small and desperate collided with my legs. It was Leo, my grandson. Usually when Leo saw me, he would shout "Grandpa" and ask if I had brought him a model airplane. Today there was no shout. There was no joy. He slammed into my knees and wrapped his small arms around my legs with a grip so tight it cut off my circulation. He was trembling. I could feel the vibrations of his fear through the fabric of my trousers. "Hey there, little pilot," I said, reaching down to pat his head. My hand felt the dampness of sweat in his hair. "Why are you running like the devil is chasing you?" Leo didn't answer. He just buried his face deeper into my thigh. I tried to pry him loose to look him in the eye, and that was when his sleeve rode up. I froze. I am an engineer. I understand physics. I understand impact and force. I know what a scrape from a playground slide looks like, and I know what a bruise from a bicycle fall looks like. What I saw on the tender skin of Leo's upper arm was neither of those things. It was a cluster of dark purple marks. 4 oval shapes on one side, one on the other. It was a handprint. Someone had grabbed him. Someone had grabbed him hard enough to rupture the blood vessels beneath his skin. My heart hammered against my ribs, a sudden violent rhythm. I knelt down, ignoring the ache in my bad knee. "Leo." I whispered, my voice trembling with a rage I tried to suppress. "Who did this?" Before the boy could whisper a word, a shadow fell over us. I looked up to see Hunter standing in the doorway. My son-in-law looked like he always did, polished, expensive, and utterly hollow. He was wearing a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my first car, holding a tumbler of amber liquid, even though it was barely 2 in the afternoon. "Pops," Hunter said. He didn't smile. He never really smiled at me, just bared his teeth in a way that mimicked politeness. "You're early. We weren't expecting you until dinner." I didn't stand up. I kept my hand on Leo's arm, exposing the bruise. "I am not here for dinner, Hunter. I am here to see my grandson. And I want to know how he got these marks on his arm." Hunter took a sip of his drink, his eyes flicking dismissively to the bruise. "Oh, that. The kid is clumsy, Elijah. You know how boys are. He took a tumble down the back stairs yesterday. Jasmine was hysterical, of course, but I told her boys need to toughen up." I stood up, then slowly drawing myself up to my full height. I might be 70, but I worked in steel mills and construction sites before I moved to the design office. "I am not a small man." "That is not a fall, Hunter," I said, my voice low and steady. "A stair tread is flat. Concrete is flat. This is a grip mark. Those are fingers." Hunter laughed. It was a dry, condescending sound. "You are seeing things, Pops. Your eyesight isn't what it used to be. Maybe you need new glasses. Or maybe you're just looking for trouble because you're bored in that empty house of yours." "Where is my daughter?" I demanded, stepping past him into the foyer. Jasmine was in the living room, or at least her body was. My daughter, the girl who used to debate politics with me at the dinner table, the woman who graduated top of her class, was sitting on the beige sectional sofa staring at a blank television screen. She was wearing a bathrobe at 2 in the afternoon. Her hair, usually braided perfectly, was loose and tangled. "Jasmine," I called out. She turned her head slowly like a rusted machine. Her eyes were glassy, the pupils dilated. "Hi, Daddy," she slurred. The word came out thick and heavy like her tongue was too big for her mouth. I rushed to her side, leaving Hunter in the doorway. "Baby, what is wrong with you? You look drugged." Hunter strolled into the room, the ice clinking in his glass. "She is having a bad day, Elijah. Postpartum depression doesn't just go away, you know." Dr. Evans adjusted her medication again. "She needs rest, not her father barging in and shouting conspiracies about bruises." I looked at Jasmine. She wasn't just depressed, she was vacant. I grabbed her hand. "Jasmine, look at Leo. Look at his arm. Hunter says he fell. Is that true?" Jasmine blinked. She looked at Leo, who was now hiding behind my legs again, peeking out with wide, terrified eyes. She looked at the bruise. For a second, just a fraction of a second, I saw a spark of recognition in her eyes. I saw the mother inside her trying to claw her way to the surface. Her mouth opened. She took a breath, but before she could speak, the kitchen door swung open, and she walked in. Patricia. The woman was a pillar of the community. She sang in the choir on Sundays, her voice a deep, soulful alto that made people weep. She organized the food drives. She visited the sick. She was a heavy-set woman with a face that seemed permanently etched with maternal kindness. She was carrying a tray with warm chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk. "Oh, Mr. Thorne." Patricia cooled her voice like warm syrup. "What a lovely surprise. I didn't know we had company." The reaction was instantaneous. The moment Leo saw Patricia, he didn't just hide. He went rigid. He stopped breathing. The little boy who had been clinging to my leg suddenly let go and backed away, pressing himself into the corner of the room as far away from her as he could get. He didn't look at the cookies. He looked at her hands. Patricia set the tray down on the coffee table and wiped her hands on her floral apron. "Come now, Leo baby," she said, walking toward him. "Why are you acting so shy? Come give Miss Patricia a hug. Grandma baked you cookies." "No," Leo shrieked. It was a sharp, piercing sound that cut through the tension in the room. "No cookies." No, Hunter sighed, rolling his eyes. "See, he's been having these tantrums all week. Patricia has been a saint dealing with him. Honestly, Elijah, I don't know what we would do without her." I stepped between Patricia and my grandson. I looked at this woman, this church lady, and for the first time I really looked at her. I didn't see the floral dress or the cross necklace. I saw the way her eyes narrowed when Leo screamed. It wasn't concern, it was annoyance. Cold reptilian annoyance. "He doesn't want the cookies, Patricia," I said. She stopped, her smile never faltering, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, Mr. Thorne. Whatever you say. Children can be so moody. I just want to help. God knows poor Mr. Hunter has his hands full with a sick wife and a difficult child." Hunter walked over and put a hand on Patricia's shoulder. "You are a blessing, Patricia. Really." Then he turned to me, his face hardening. "I think you should go, Elijah. You are upsetting Jasmine. Look at her." I looked back at my daughter. She had curled into a ball on the sofa, rocking back and forth, humming a tune to herself. She had retreated completely. The spark I had seen was gone, extinguished by the mere presence of the nanny and the husband. I wanted to fight. I wanted to punch Hunter in his perfect jaw. I wanted to grab Leo and Jasmine and drag them out of that mausoleum of a house, but I knew the law. I knew that if I caused a scene, Hunter would call the police. He was a wealthy white businessman in a wealthy white neighborhood. I was an angry black man. I knew exactly who the police would believe. If I got arrested today, I couldn't protect them tomorrow. I have to be smart, I told myself. I have to think like an engineer, analyze the structure, find the weak point. I will go, I said, my voice calm, though my blood was boiling, but I will be back tomorrow to check on that arm. I knelt down one last time to say goodbye to Leo. He was still in the corner. I reached out to touch his cheek. "Be a brave soldier, Leo," I whispered. "Grandpa is going to fix this. I promise." Leo didn't answer. He just looked at Patricia, who was standing over us like a vulture waiting for a carcass. I walked to the door. The heavy oak slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing like a gunshot. I walked down the driveway to my truck, my heart heavy with a feeling of absolute failure. I climbed into the cab of my truck, but I didn't start the engine. I just sat there gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned ash gray. I looked up at the house. In the second-story window, the window to Leo's bedroom, I saw movement. Leo was standing there. His small hands were pressed against the glass. He wasn't waving goodbye. He wasn't crying. He was just staring at me with a look of absolute soul-crushing despair. It was the look of a prisoner watching his only hope drive away. And then a hand appeared on his shoulder, Patricia's hand. She pulled him away from the window and the curtains snapped shut. I sat there for a long time, the silence of the car deafening. Hunter thought I was just a senile old man. Patricia thought she had everyone fooled with her hymns and cookies. They thought they had won. I reached into my glove compartment and pulled out a notepad. I wrote down the date and the time, then I wrote down one sentence. Buy a camera. I started the engine. They had no idea who they had just declared war on. The silence in my house was usually a comfort, a soft blanket of solitude that I had grown used to over the last 5 years. But that evening, after leaving Hunter's estate, the silence felt heavy. It felt like a cage. I paced the length of my living room, the image of those purple bruises on Leo's arm burning in my mind like a brand. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his terrified face. I saw the way he flinched when Patricia walked into the room. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 7 in the evening. Jasmine would be awake. Hunter usually retreated to his study with a bottle of scotch by this time, leaving my daughter alone. This was my chance. I needed to hear her voice. I needed to make her understand that what was happening in that house was not normal. I picked up the landline receiver, the plastic cold against my ear, and dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang 4 times. I was about to hang up, my heart sinking, when the line clicked open. Jasmine. I said the word rushing out of me in a breath of relief. Baby, please listen to me. We need to talk about Leo. There was a pause on the other end, a long stretching silence that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Then a voice spoke. But it was not the soft melodic voice of my daughter. It was the smooth, polished baritone of Hunter. Elijah Hunter said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded disappointed, like a teacher speaking to a slow student. I thought we discussed this earlier. Jasmine is resting. She had a very difficult afternoon after you upset her. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles turned white. Put her on the phone, Hunter. I have the right to speak to my daughter. She is sedated, Elijah, he replied calmly. Doctor. Evans prescribed a stronger dose to help her sleep. She was frantic after you left, screaming about bruises that don't exist. Honestly, it breaks my heart to see her like this. And it breaks my heart to see you fueling her delusions. I am not fueling anything. I snapped, fighting to keep my voice steady. I saw the marks, Hunter. I touched them. That boy is terrified. You saw shadows. Elijah Hunter cut in his voice, dropping an octave, becoming colder. You are 70 years old. We all know that cognitive decline can happen slowly. First, you forget where you put your keys. Then, you start imagining things. Paranoia is a common symptom in men your age, especially those who live alone and have too much time to think. I felt a surge of heat rise up my neck. I am a retired chief engineer, Hunter. I can still calculate the load-bearing capacity of a bridge in my head. My mind is sharp. Do not try to gaslight me. Hunter chuckled softly. A dry, humorless sound. See, that is exactly what I mean. You are agitated. You are aggressive. Listen to me very carefully, Elijah. I have a reputation to protect. I run a multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical company. I cannot have a senile old man barging into my home shouting accusations at my staff and frightening my son. If you continue with this behavior, if you continue to harass Patricia or upset Jasmine, I will have to take measures. What kind of measures? I asked, my voice low. I will petition the court for a protective order, Hunter said. He said it casually as if he were ordering lunch. I have friends in the judicial system, Elijah. It would be very easy to paint a picture of an unstable, grieving grandfather who has lost his grip on reality. You will never set foot on this property again. You will never see Leo again. Do you understand me? The threat hung in the air, toxic and heavy. He was threatening to cut the only lifeline I had. He was threatening to erase me from my grandson's life. I understand, Hunter, I said, forcing the words through gritted teeth. I understand perfectly, Good Hunter said. Now get some sleep, Elijah. You sound tired. The line went dead. I stood there in the middle of my living room, listening to the drone of the dial tone. It sounded like a flat line. I hung up the phone slowly. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from a rage so profound it felt like magma in my veins. I walked over to the fireplace mantel where a framed photograph sat in the center. It was a picture of Esther, my late wife, taken 2 years before she passed. She was smiling. Her eyes crinkled at the corners, radiating the warmth that used to fill this house. I picked up the photo and ran my thumb over the glass. Esther had been the strong one. She was the one who held us together. But in the end, her strength hadn't saved her. I remembered the doctor who had treated her, a specialist with certificates on his wall and a compassionate smile just like Hunter. He had told us the pain in her stomach was just indigestion, a side effect of aging. He had patted my shoulder and told me not to worry that I was being overprotective. We trusted him because he wore a white coat. We trusted him because he was an expert. By the time we found the tumor, it was the size of a grapefruit. It was too late. I watched the light leave my wife's eyes because I listened to a man who thought he knew better than we did. I stood by her grave and promised I would never let anyone I loved be a victim of arrogance again. And now history was repeating itself. Hunter was the man in the clean suit, the expert with the medical background, telling me that my eyes were lying. He was telling me that my daughter's lethargy and my grandson's terror were just symptoms of my own aging mind. He was using his authority to hide the truth, just like that doctor had done. I looked at Esther's face one last time. "I failed you, Essie," I whispered to the empty room. "I let them dismiss your pain until it killed you. But I swear on this life I will not fail Leo. I don't care if Hunter has all the judges in the city in his pocket. I don't care if he has a fleet of lawyers. I am an engineer. If I cannot walk through the front door, I will build a tunnel underneath it." I set the photo down. The sadness in my chest hardened into resolve. Hunter thought he had scared me off. He thought by threatening to take Leo away he would force me into submission. He had made a critical error in his calculation. He had forgotten that a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous man on earth. I went to my bedroom and opened the small safe in my closet. I bypassed the bank account I used for daily expenses. Instead, I reached into the back and pulled out a stack of cash I had been saving for a rainy day. This wasn't just rain. This was a hurricane. I didn't sleep that night. I spent the hours sitting in my armchair plotting. I mapped out the layout of Hunter's house in my mind. I calculated the angles of the rooms. I estimated the patrol times of the private security firm that circled their gated community. The next morning, I didn't go to the grocery store as I usually did. I drove 40 minutes into the city to a neighborhood that had seen better days. I parked my truck 2 blocks away and walked to a small, nondescript shop with blacked-out windows. The sign above the door simply read, "The Spyglass." A bell chimed as I pushed the door open. The air inside smelled of ozone and cheap plastic. The shelves were lined with listening devices, GPS trackers, and hidden cameras disguised as everyday objects. A young man with piercings in his eyebrows looked up from behind the counter. He looked at my gray hair and my sensible cardigan and smirked. "Lost your way, Pops?" he asked. "The pharmacy is down the street." I walked up to the counter and placed a $100 bill on the glass surface. "I am not lost, son. I need a nanny cam. But not the kind you buy at Walmart. I need something with high-definition night vision and a battery life that lasts at least 48 hours. And it needs to be completely undetectable." The boy's smirk vanished. He looked at the money, then at me. He saw that I wasn't playing games. He reached under the counter and pulled out a box. "This is the top of the line," he said. 4K resolution motion-activated recording, and it stores data on a micro SD card concealed inside the battery compartment. He opened the box. Inside sat a teddy bear. It was a classic brown bear with a red ribbon around its neck. It looked soft, innocent, and completely harmless. "Where is the lens?" I asked, picking it up. "The left eye," the clerk said. "It is behind the black plastic pupil. Even if you shine a flashlight on it, you won't see the reflection. It connects to Wi-Fi for live streaming, but it also records locally in case the network goes down." I turned the bear over in my hands. It was perfect. It was a Trojan horse made of plush and polyester. "I will take it," I said. "And I need a 64-gigabyte memory card. And I am paying cash. No receipts." The clerk nodded, sensing the gravity of the transaction. "You got it." I walked out of that shop with the bear tucked inside a brown paper bag. It felt heavy in my arms, heavier than a toy should be. I named him Major Bear in my head. He was going to be my eyes and ears inside the fortress. He was going to be the soldier I left behind enemy lines to watch over my grandson. Sunday morning arrived with a gray, overcast sky. It was the day I usually sat in the second pew at First Baptist Church shaking hands and singing hymns. Today I went to church, but I didn't go inside the sanctuary. I parked my truck at the far end of the church parking lot under the shade of a large oak tree. From here, I had a clear view of the side exit, the one leading to the reserved parking spots for the choir members and church elders. I knew Patricia would be there. She never missed a service. She was the star of the congregation, the woman who raised her hands the highest during worship. I waited for 2 hours. The muffled sound of the organ and the choir singing Amazing Grace drifted through the air. It sounded beautiful, but to my ears today, it sounded like a lie. Finally, the service ended. The heavy double doors opened, and the congregation spilled out. I watched as families hugged and chatted. And then I saw her. Patricia walked out the side door. She was wearing a large white hat and a floral dress that billowed in the wind. She was smiling, waving to people, hugging a young mother. She looked exactly like what everyone said. She was a saint. But she didn't walk toward the bus stop. She didn't walk to a friend's car. She walked quickly toward the back of the parking lot, away from the crowd, toward the dumpsters where the church kept its recycling bins. I slumped down in my seat, peering over the dashboard. My heart began to thud against my ribs. A black sedan with tinted windows was idling near the dumpsters. It was an older model, rusted around the wheel wells, the kind of car that didn't belong in this affluent church lot. Patricia looked over her shoulder once, checking to see if anyone was watching. Satisfied that the crowd was distracted, she approached the car. The passenger window rolled down. I squinted, wishing I had brought binoculars. A bare arm reached out from the car. It was thick and covered in dark, chaotic tattoos. It was not the arm of a churchgoer. Patricia reached into her oversized handbag. She pulled out a small white paper envelope. It was thick. She handed it to the person in the car. The hand with the tattoos took the envelope and in exchange handed her a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. It was tiny, no bigger than a thumb. Patricia took the vial and slipped it quickly into her bra. She said something to the person in the car, her face hard and unsmiling, completely different from the benevolent mask she wore inside the church. The window rolled up. The black sedan peeled away, tires crunching on the gravel, and disappeared onto the main road. Patricia smoothed her dress, took a deep breath, and fixed that beatific smile back onto her face before turning around to rejoin the crowd. I sat frozen in my truck. My breath hitched in my throat. This wasn't just a bad nanny. This wasn't just a strict woman who pinched children. Patricia was buying something illicit in a church parking lot. And whatever was in that small glass vial, I had a sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach that it wasn't holy water. It was something she was planning to bring into my son-in-law's house. I looked at the brown paper bag on the passenger seat next to me. Major Bear. I had to get that camera into Leo's room tonight, because if my instincts were right, time was running out faster than I had ever imagined. The paper bag in my arms felt heavier than a bag of groceries. It felt like I was carrying a bomb, one that I hoped would blow up the lies surrounding my family. I had returned to Hunter's estate later that afternoon under the pretense of apologizing. I told him I wanted to make peace for the sake of the family. I told him I was an old man who got confused and emotional. It tasted like ash in my mouth to say those words to a man I despised, but I was a soldier on a mission now, and soldiers do what is necessary to complete the objective. I found Leo in the solarium. It was a cold room filled with expensive exotic plants that Jasmine used to love, but now withered in their pots. Leo was sitting on the floor, pushing a toy car back and forth on the marble tiles. The silence in the room was unnatural for a 5-year-old boy. When he saw me, his eyes widened, but he didn't run to me this time. He glanced toward the door, checking to see if the coast was clear. I knelt down beside him, my knees cracking against the hard floor. "Hey there, little pilot," I whispered. "I brought you a friend." I reached into the bag and pulled out the teddy bear. It was soft with golden brown fur and a red ribbon tied in a bow around its neck. It looked completely ordinary. To anyone else, it was just a $20 toy. To me, it was Major Bear, the guardian of the truth. Leo looked at the bear skeptically. He didn't reach for it. His trust had been eroded, worn down by the adults in this house who were supposed to protect him. "This isn't just a regular bear, Leo." I leaned in close, lowering my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "This is Major Bear. He is a special soldier. He is going to watch over you when Grandpa isn't here. He has magic eyes. If you ever get scared, you just squeeze his paw and he will tell me." "Okay." Leo looked from the bear to me. His lower lip trembled. "Is he strong?" "He is the strongest bear in the world," I said, placing the toy in his arms. "He is going to sit right on your nightstand facing your bed. He will never close his eyes. Leo hugged the bear. For the first time in days, I saw his shoulders relax just a fraction. Thank you, Grandpa. Suddenly, heavy footsteps echoed on the marble floor behind us. I stiffened. I knew that walk. It was the arrogant, confident stride of a man who owned everything he walked upon. Hunter appeared in the doorway. He was wearing his tennis whites, a towel draped around his neck. He looked at me, then at the bear in Leo's arms. His eyes narrowed instantly. "I thought I told you to go home, Elijah," Hunter said, his voice clipped. "And what is that filthy thing? We don't bring cheap dust collectors into this house. Leo has allergies." My heart hammered against my ribs. If Hunter inspected that bear, if he felt the hard battery pack in the back or noticed the glass lens in the eye, it was over. I would never see Leo again. I needed a distraction. I needed to appeal to the one thing Hunter loved more than control: his vanity. I stood up, blocking his view of Leo. "I am leaving, Hunter. I just wanted to give the boy a peace offering, and I brought one for you, too." I reached into the oversized pocket of my trench coat and pulled out the bottle of wine I had bought on the way here. It was a Chateau Margaux 1995. It cost me nearly $1,000 money I had been saving to fix the roof of my house. But a roof could wait. My grandson could not. "I remembered you mentioned this vintage last Thanksgiving," I said, holding the bottle out like a shield. "I have been saving it for a special occasion, but I realize today that family is the only occasion that matters. I am sorry for my outburst earlier. I am just an old man who worries too much. Please, take it." Hunter stopped. His eyes locked onto the label. The greed was instantaneous. It washed over his face, smoothing out the suspicion. He knew exactly how much that bottle was worth. He stepped forward and took the wine from my hand, caressing the glass neck. 1995. Hunter murmured, a smirk playing on his lips. "You have expensive taste for a pensioner, Elijah." "I just want us to get along," I lied, forcing a smile that made my face ache. "For Jasmine, for Leo." Hunter nodded. His ego stroked his prize in hand. He had won. He had forced the angry father-in-law to bow down and pay tribute. Or so he thought. "Fine." He waved a dismissive hand toward Leo. "The bear can stay. But if I hear one sneeze, it goes in the trash. Now show yourself out, Elijah. I have a meeting with my investors in an hour." I walked out of that house with my heart in my throat, but I didn't look back. I had planted the seed. Now I had to wait for it to grow. That night, my house felt like a command center. I had set up my laptop on the kitchen table, connected to the high-speed internet. I had a pot of black coffee brewing, the aroma filling the room, sharp and bitter. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. 1 a.m. 2 a.m. On the screen, the feed from Major Bear was crystal clear. The night vision turned the room into a ghostly landscape of greens and blacks. I could see Leo sleeping in his bed. He was tossing and turning, kicking off the expensive duvet cover. He looked so small in that big, empty room. The bear was positioned perfectly on the nightstand, its unblinking eye capturing every shadow. I sat there, my eyes burning from the strain, waiting. I told myself that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just a paranoid old man. Maybe Patricia was just a strict nanny, and Hunter was just a cold father. I prayed that I was wrong. I prayed that I would watch 8 hours of a sleeping child and feel foolish in the morning. But at 2:14 in the morning, the door to Leo's room slowly creaked open. I leaned forward, my breath catching in my throat. Patricia entered the room. She wasn't wearing her usual floral dress. She was wearing a heavy robe. In the green light of the camera, her eyes looked hollow black pits in a pale face. She didn't turn on the light. She moved with a stealth that was terrifying for a woman of her size. She walked to the side of the bed and stood over Leo. She just stood there for a long moment, watching him sleep. It made my skin crawl. It was predatory. Then she sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress dipped under her weight. Leo stirred. He woke up, rubbing his eyes. When he saw her, he flinched, pulling his knees up to his chest. "Grandma Patricia," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Shh." She placed a finger over her lips. The microphone on the camera picked up the sound. It was crisp. It was intimate. "Don't wake your daddy, child. He is very angry with you today." Leo shook his head. "No, Daddy isn't angry." "Oh, he is." Patricia leaned closer, her face inches from his. I could see the cruelty etched into the lines of her mouth. "He told me tonight. He said he is tired of you crying. He said he wishes he had a brave boy, not a little coward like you. My hands gripped the edge of the table so hard the wood groaned. She wasn't hitting him. She was doing something far worse. She was poisoning his mind. She was dismantling his sense of safety brick by brick. I didn't do anything bad. Leo whimpered, tears spilling down his cheeks. You exist, Leo, Patricia whispered. That is enough. Your mother is sick because of you. She wants to leave. She told me she wants to go far away where she doesn't have to hear you cry anymore. But I am here. Only Grandma Patricia loves you. Everyone else wants you gone. This was torture. It was psychological warfare against a 5-year-old. I wanted to reach through the screen and strangle her. I wanted to drive my truck through the wall of that house, but I couldn't move. I had to record this. I needed the evidence. Then the tone changed. Patricia reached into the pocket of her robe. You need to be a good boy now, Leo. She pulled out a small glass vial. It had no label. The liquid inside looked dark, almost black in the night vision, but I remembered the red tint from the parking lot. It looked thick like syrup. I don't want the medicine, Leo cried, his voice rising in panic. It tastes bad. It makes my head fuzzy. Hush, Patricia hissed. Her hand shot out and grabbed his jaw, squeezing his cheeks together to force his mouth open. It was the same grip that had left the bruises on his arm. I watched in horror as the mystery of the handprint was solved in real time. You will drink this, and you will sleep. If you don't, the monsters will come. The monsters that take bad little boys away. Leo struggled. He kicked his legs. But he was 5 years old, and she was a strong, heavy woman. She pinned him down with her other arm. She tilted the vial and poured the dark liquid into his mouth. Swallow, she commanded. Leo gagged. He choked, but he swallowed. Patricia held his mouth shut for a second longer to make sure he didn't spit it out. Then she released him. Leo fell back onto the pillows, coughing, gasping for air. Patricia capped the vial and put it back in her pocket. She smoothed the blanket over him with a chilling mock tenderness. Good boy. Now sleep. If you tell your grandpa about this, the monsters will take him too. She stood up and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. I watched the screen, paralyzed with terror. I waited for Leo to cry. I waited for him to get up. But he didn't. 10 seconds. That was all it took. Leo's eyes rolled back in his head. His struggle ceased instantly. His small body went limp, his arms flopping to the side like a rag doll that had been dropped. His chest rose and fell in a slow, unnatural rhythm. It wasn't sleep. It was a shutdown. I stared at the image of my unconscious grandson, the silence of my kitchen screaming in my ears. That wasn't cough syrup. That wasn't Benadryl. That was a sedative strong enough to knock out a grown man, and she had just fed it to a child who weighed 40 pounds. I hit the save button on the recording. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely control the mouse. Tears of rage blurred my vision. I had the proof. I had the weapon. But as I looked at Leo's lifeless form on that screen, I realized that going to the police in the morning might be too late. They were slowly killing him. They were erasing him. I grabbed my car keys. I didn't care about the time. I didn't care about the restraining order Hunter had threatened. I was going to that house, and if I had to burn it down to get him out, then I would let it burn. The fluorescent lights of the second precinct hummed with a low, irritating buzz that felt like a drill boring directly into my skull. I sat on a hard metal chair, clutching my laptop to my chest like a shield. I had been waiting for 45 minutes. 45 minutes of watching officers walk by with coffee cups, joking about their weekends while my grandson was trapped in a house of horrors. Finally, a young officer beckoned me over to his desk. His name tag read, Officer Miller. He looked barely old enough to shave, and he had the bored, impatient expression of a man who had already decided that whatever I had to say was a waste of his time. I opened the laptop and played the video. My hand shook as I pointed at the screen. Look right there, officer. Look at her eyes. Look at the way she forces his mouth open. That is not a caregiver. That is an assailant. Officer Miller leaned back in his chair, chewing on the end of a pen. He watched the footage for maybe 10 seconds. He saw Patricia enter the room. He saw her whisper to Leo. He saw her give him the liquid. Then he looked up at me and shrugged. I don't see an assault, Mr. Thorne. I see a nanny doing her job. The kid was tossing and turning. She gave him some medicine to help him sleep. My wife does the same thing with our toddler when he gets cranky. I stared at him, unable to process the level of indifference I was hearing. Did you see how he went limp, officer? He was out cold in 10 seconds. That is not cough syrup. That is a sedative, a powerful one. And look at the bottle. There is no label, no prescription. Officer Miller sighed and rubbed his temples. He typed something into his computer without looking at me. Look, Mr. Thorne, I know you mean well. I checked your file. You are a retired engineer. You are a respectable man. But you are also a grandfather who is living alone, and maybe you are feeling a little left out. Left out. I repeated the words, feeling the bile rise in my throat. This is not about me being lonely. This is about a woman drugging a 5-year-old boy, and the father knows about it. Officer Miller stopped typing. He swiveled his chair around to face me fully. His face hardened. Now you are accusing Hunter Vance. Do you know who that is? Mr. Vance is a pillar of this community. His company donated the new defibrillators to this precinct last month. He is a businessman, not a criminal mastermind. So because he has money, he cannot be abusive. I asked, my voice rising. Is that how the law works now? Lower your voice or I will have you escorted out. Miller snapped. He leaned forward, crossing his arms. Let me tell you what I see here. I see an old man who is having trouble adjusting to the fact that his daughter and her husband have their own way of doing things. You recorded them without their consent inside their private home. Do you know that is technically illegal? If Mr. Vance wanted to press charges for invasion of privacy, he could. I felt the blood drain from my face. I came here for help and you are threatening me with arrest. I am giving you a warning, Miller said, handing me back my laptop. Go home, Mr. Thorne. Find a hobby. Join a bridge club. Stop looking for demons where there are only tired parents trying to get a good night's sleep. If you continue to harass this family, we will have to intervene, and not in the way you want. I walked out of that station feeling a mixture of rage and despair that was so heavy I could barely breathe. The law was not blind. It was selective. It saw a wealthy white man in a big house and saw a citizen to protect. It saw a black grandfather with a wild story and saw a nuisance to be silenced. I got into my truck and slammed the door. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Officer Miller told me to go home. He told me to find a hobby. My hobby was saving my family. I turned the ignition and floored the gas pedal. I wasn't going home. I was going to get Leo. If the police wouldn't arrest Patricia, I would drag her out of that house myself. I would take Leo and Jasmine and drive until we were across state lines. I didn't care about kidnapping charges. I didn't care about jail. I only cared about the image of Leo's eyes rolling back into his head. The drive to the gated community took 20 minutes, but it felt like 5 seconds. My mind was a blur of adrenaline and panic. I pulled up to the security gate. The guard usually waved me through, but today the arm didn't lift. I rolled down my window, ready to argue, but the guard just shook his head and pointed to a sign, no entry. I reversed the truck and drove through the exit lane, ignoring the tire spikes. I heard a pop as one of my rear tires blew, but I kept driving. I limped the truck up the winding hill on 3 good tires, the rim grinding against the asphalt. I screeched to a halt in front of Hunter's driveway. I didn't even turn off the engine. I jumped out and sprinted toward the front door. But the door was already open. Hunter was standing on the porch. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't scared. He was smiling. He was holding a piece of paper in his hand, waving it gently in the breeze like a white flag. But it wasn't a flag of surrender. It was a declaration of war. "Stop right there, Elijah," Hunter called out. His voice was calm, pleasant even. "Where is my grandson?" I roared, stepping onto the paved walkway. "I know what you are doing, Hunter." I showed the police. Hunter laughed. It was a rich, hearty sound. "Oh, I know you did. Officer Miller gave me a courtesy call the moment you left. He wanted to let me know that a disturbed elderly relative was making wild accusations. He wanted to make sure everything was all right over here. I told him we were fine, but that I was very concerned about your mental state. You are a monster." I spat, moving closer. "Move aside. I am taking Leo." Hunter stopped smiling. He held up the paper. "Do you know what this is, Elijah?" I stopped. I knew exactly what it was. "This is an emergency ex parte restraining order," Hunter said, savoring every syllable. "A judge signed it 20 minutes ago. It states that Elijah Thorne is prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Jasmine Vance, Leo Vance, or our primary residence. It cites a history of erratic behavior, verbal abuse, and illegal surveillance of a minor." He took a step forward, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "You planted a camera in a teddy bear, Elijah. That is sick." The judge was appalled. He agreed that you are a danger to Leo's emotional well-being. I stared at the paper. The ink was still fresh. He had turned my only weapon against me. He had taken my attempt to protect Leo and twisted it into proof of my insanity. That footage proves she drugged him. I shouted, my voice cracking. That footage shows a nanny giving a child herbal sleep aid. Hunter countered, smooth as silk. But the fact that you recorded it shows that you are obsessed. You are stalking us, Elijah, and now I have the legal right to stop you. He pointed to the line where the manicured grass of his lawn met the public sidewalk. See that grass line? That is the boundary. If you put one toe on my property, I will call the police. And this time they won't just give you a warning. They will arrest you for violating a court order. You will go to jail. And while you are sitting in a cell rotting away, I will be here raising my son my way. I looked at the house. I looked at the second-floor window. And then I heard it. It was faint, muffled by the double-paned glass, but in the silence of the afternoon it cut through the air like a knife. Grandpa. It was a cry, a sobbing, desperate wail. Grandpa, help! My heart shattered into 1,000 jagged pieces. He was awake. He was scared. And he knew I was there. I took a step forward. My foot hovered over the grass. Go ahead. Hunter whispered, his eyes wide with anticipation. Do it. Give me a reason to lock you up for good. If you go to jail today, who will be left to watch over him? Who will be there to save him then? No one. He was right. And that was the cruelest part of his trap. If I crossed that line, I satisfied my anger, but I lost the war. If I got arrested, I left Leo completely defenseless. I froze. My entire body was trembling with the effort of holding back. I wanted to tear him apart. I wanted to burn the world down. But I couldn't. Not if I wanted to win. The crying upstairs got louder. Grandpa, please. I bit my lips so hard I tasted copper. Tears streamed down my face, hot and angry. I slowly lowered my foot back onto the concrete of the sidewalk. Hunter smirked. Smart choice, old man. Now get off my street before I call the cops anyway for loitering. He turned his back on me and walked into the house, slamming the heavy door shut. The lock clicked. The sound of Leo's crying was cut off, instantly silenced by the thick walls of the fortress. I stood there alone on the sidewalk with a flat tire and a broken heart. I was 500 feet away from the person I loved most in the world, but it felt like 5 million miles. I looked at the closed door. I wiped the tears from my face with my rough engineer hands. You think you have won, Hunter? I whispered to the silent house. You think a piece of paper can stop a grandfather. You think the law is the only way to fight. I walked back to my truck. I didn't look defeated. I looked focused. I opened the door and climbed in. I looked at the dashboard where I had thrown the spy shop receipt. The law had failed me. The police had failed me. The system was broken. Fine. If I couldn't be a grandfather anymore, I would have to be something else. I put the truck in gear and drove away on the rim, sparks flying behind me like the fuse of a bomb that had just been lit. I wasn't going to the police station again. I was going to the dumpster behind the house. If I couldn't walk through the front door, I would dig through their filth until I found something that would bury them. The sun had not yet risen when I parked my truck 3 blocks away from the entrance to Hunter's gated community. It was 4 in the morning. The air was cold and damp, settling into my bones in a way that reminded me of my age. But the fire in my chest kept me warm. I sat in the darkness, watching the streetlights hum, waiting for the only vehicle that was allowed to enter that fortress without question at this ungodly hour. The garbage truck. I had spent my career designing structures that could withstand hurricanes and earthquakes. I knew that every system had a weak point. For Hunter's house, the weak point was the waste he produced. He could lock his doors and install alarms, but he eventually had to throw things away. At 4:15, the heavy rumble of the municipal waste truck shattered the silence. It turned the corner, its headlights cutting through the fog. I watched it roll up to the gate. The security arm lifted automatically. I waited. I counted the minutes. I knew the route. They would do the loop inside the community and come back out in approximately 20 minutes. I pulled my truck out of the shadows and idled near the exit. When the garbage truck emerged, I flashed my high beams twice. The driver, a burly man in a neon vest, slowed down, probably thinking I was a resident with a complaint. I rolled down my window as he pulled alongside me. He looked annoyed. "Can I help you, buddy?" he grunted. I held up a $100 bill. It fluttered in the cold wind. "I need a favor," I said. The driver's eyes locked onto the money. "What kind of favor?" "The house at 12 Maple Drive, the big white colonial. I need the bags you just picked up from there." The driver laughed, a rough barking sound. You want trash. What are you, a private eye or something? I am a grandfather, I said, my voice dead serious. And I think someone in that house is hurting my family. The laughter died in his throat. He looked at me, really looked at me. He saw the desperation in my eyes. He saw that I wasn't crazy, just broken. He checked his mirrors to make sure no one was watching. Then he nodded toward the back of his truck. I haven't compacted the load yet. The rich folks usually use the white bags with the red drawstrings. They are right on top. You have 2 minutes before I get to the main road. I didn't hesitate. I jumped out of my truck, my bad knee screaming in protest. I climbed up the side of the garbage truck. The smell hit me instantly. It was a thick, cloying stench of rotting food, dirty diapers, and sour milk. It was the smell of reality, stripped of all the perfume and polish Hunter used to hide his life. I grabbed the 2 white bags he pointed out. They were heavy. I threw them into the bed of my pickup truck and handed the driver the bill. "Thank you," I said. He just nodded and shifted gears. "Good luck, Pops." I drove to an abandoned parking lot near the river. I couldn't go home. I couldn't risk anyone seeing me. I was Elijah Thorne, the former chief engineer, a man who used to wear tailored suits and command respect. Now I was standing in a desolate lot under the flickering light of a street lamp, pulling on a pair of latex gloves to dig through another man's filth. I cut the first bag open. Coffee grounds spilled out, covering my boots. I sifted through the mess. I found empty wine bottles, expensive ones. I found receipts for dry cleaning. I found the remnants of a lobster dinner. It was disgusting. But I kept digging. I was an archaeologist of my son-in-law's sins. Then I found it. Deep at the bottom of the second bag, wrapped inside a paper towel, were 2 bottles. The first was a small glass vial. It was sticky. I held it up to the light. It was the same shape as the one Patricia had used. There was a residue of dark red liquid at the bottom. I unscrewed the cap and sniffed. It smelled sweet, like artificial cherries, but underneath the sweetness was a sharp chemical odor that made my head spin. It wasn't herbal, it was industrial. The second bottle was a standard orange prescription container. The label said Jasmine Vance. The medication name was listed as sertraline, a common antidepressant. But something was wrong. I ran my thumb over the label. It felt thick, uneven. I scratched at the corner with my fingernail. The paper peeled back. Underneath the label that said sertraline, there was another label, a darker one, but it had been scraped off, leaving only fragments of letters. I looked at the pills inside. They weren't the oval blue tablets usually associated with Zoloft. They were small, round, and white. Hunter was a pharmacist. He owned a pharmaceutical distribution company. He had access to everything. He had the equipment to print labels. He had the ability to swap pills. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the bottle. I carefully placed the evidence into a Ziploc bag I had brought with me. I stripped off the filthy gloves and left the trash bags in the lot. I didn't care about littering. I had what I needed. I drove straight to Harrison's house. Harrison was a retired toxicologist who used to work for the state crime lab. We had played chess together every Tuesday for 15 years. He was the only man I trusted to tell me the truth without judging me. It was 6 in the morning when I pounded on his door. He opened it wearing a bathrobe, his eyes bleary with sleep. "Elijah," he grumbled. "Do you know what time it is?" I didn't apologize. I walked past him into his kitchen and placed the Ziploc bag on his pristine granite counter. "I need you to test these," I said. "Right now." Harrison looked at the dirty bag, then at my disheveled appearance. He saw the stain on my shirt from the garbage truck. He saw the wild look in my eyes. He didn't ask questions. He went to his study and came back with his portable testing kit. He was a man of science like me. He respected data. He opened the orange bottle and took out one of the white pills. He crushed it into a fine powder and mixed it with a reagent solution. I watched the liquid change color. It turned a deep, violent purple. Harrison frowned. He adjusted his glasses and looked closer. He did the test again. The result was the same. "Elijah, where did you get these?" he asked, his voice low and serious. "From a bottle labeled sertraline," I said. "Prescribed to my daughter for postpartum depression." Harrison took off his glasses and looked at me with a mixture of pity and horror. "This is not sertraline, Elijah. This is haloperidol, a high dose." I felt the room sway. "What is that?" "It is an antipsychotic," Harrison explained. "It is used to treat severe schizophrenia or acute mania in violent patients. It is a chemical straitjacket. It sedates the brain. It makes the patient docile, confused, lethargic. It suppresses their will. He looked at the bottle again. If Jasmine has been taking this thinking it was an antidepressant, it explains everything. It explains why she can't speak clearly, why she has no energy, why she is compliant. This drug blocks dopamine receptors. It turns a person into a zombie. And the liquid, I asked, pointing to the sticky vial. Harrison took a sample of the red syrup. He smelled it, then put a drop on a testing strip. Chloral hydrate, he said. It is an old-school sedative. They call it knockout drops. It was used in the 19th century to kidnap sailors. It is dangerous, Elijah. One wrong dose and a child's heart could stop. I sank onto a kitchen stool. The weight of the revelation crashed down on me. It wasn't just abuse. It wasn't just a bad marriage. It was a calculated medical dismantling of my family. Hunter was using his knowledge of drugs to keep my daughter enslaved in her own mind and my grandson unconscious in his bed. He was erasing them, and he was doing it right under the nose of the law, hiding behind fake labels and his reputation as a healthcare executive. Why, I whispered. Why would he do this? Harrison put a hand on my shoulder. I don't know the why, Elijah, but I know the what. This is poisoning. This is attempted murder. You need to go to the police. I laughed a bitter, broken sound. I went to the police. They laughed at me. They gave him a restraining order against me. They won't believe me, Harrison. They will say I tampered with the pills. They will say I found them in the trash so the chain of custody is broken. They will say a crazy old man is trying to frame the successful son-in-law. Then, what are you going to do? Harrison asked. I stood up. I looked at the deadly white powder on the counter. I am going to stop playing by their rules, I said. Hunter thinks he is the only one who understands chemistry. He thinks he is the only one who can build a trap. But he forgot one thing. What is that? Harrison asked. I built bridges, I said, my voice hardening into steel, and I know exactly where to place the explosives to bring them down. I took the evidence back. I thanked my friend. I walked out into the morning light. The sun was up now. The world looked the same as it did yesterday, but everything had changed. I was no longer just a grandfather fighting for visitation rights. I was a man hunting a predator, and I was done asking for permission. The digital clock on my microwave blinked 12 noon, but inside my house it felt like midnight. The darkness wasn't in the room, it was inside my chest. I sat at my kitchen table with the Ziploc bag containing the lethal white powder sitting next to my coffee mug. Harrison had confirmed the poison. Now I needed to confirm the conspiracy. My eyes were glued to the laptop screen, watching the live feed from the teddy bear I had planted in my grandson's room. But Leo wasn't in the room right now. The camera angle I had chosen was wide enough to catch the hallway and a sliver of the living room downstairs through the open bedroom door. It wasn't a perfect view, but the audio was crystal clear. Major Bear was listening. I had been staring at the screen for 4 hours straight. My eyes burned. My arthritis was flaring up in my hands, but I didn't move. I was a statue of vengeance waiting for the pigeons to land, and then finally they did. I heard the heavy front door slam shut. Footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors. It was the confident, rhythmic stride of a man who owned the world. Hunter. He walked into the frame of the living room. He was wearing a navy blue suit, the kind that cost more than my first house. He looked fresh, energized. He didn't look like a man whose wife was deteriorating mentally or whose son was constantly terrified. He looked like a man who had just closed a massive deal. Patricia entered from the kitchen. She was wiping her hands on her apron. She moved slower today, heavy with a burden I assumed was her own weight, but now I suspected was the weight of her sins. Hunter stopped in the middle of the room. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He pulled out a thick white envelope. It was bulging. I leaned forward in my chair, my nose almost touching the laptop screen. I knew what was in that envelope. I had seen the transaction in the church parking lot, but this was different. That was for drugs. This was for silence. Hunter held the envelope out. He didn't say a word at first. He just dangled it in the air like a carrot before a mule. Patricia walked over. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look ashamed. She reached out with her large, rough hand and took the envelope. She squeezed it, feeling the thickness of the stack of bills inside. I felt a wave of nausea roll over me. This woman was a deaconess. She sang solos in the choir about the glory of God. She held babies during christenings. And here she was selling her soul in a living room filled with imported furniture. There is 5,000 there. Hunter said, his voice smooth and devoid of any emotion. Consider it a performance bonus. You have managed the situation with Jasmine perfectly. She is completely unstable. Even the neighbors are starting to talk about how crazy she looks when she wanders into the garden. Patricia opened the flap of the envelope. She thumbed through the bills. Her face remained impassive, a mask of stone. She is getting worse, Patricia said. Her voice was low, gravelly. Yesterday she didn't even recognize the boy. She thought he was a stranger. She tried to hide in the closet. The dosage is strong, Hunter. Maybe too strong. Hunter laughed. It was a chilling sound that made the hair on my arm stand up. It is exactly the right strength, Patricia. We need her to be beyond saving. Dr. Evans is coming for an evaluation in 2 weeks. If she is lucid, he might recommend therapy. If she is a drooling paranoid mess, he will recommend immediate institutionalization. I slammed my fist onto the table, making the coffee mug jump. 2 weeks. He had a timeline. He had a deadline for the destruction of my daughter. Once Dr. Evans signs the commitment papers, I get power of attorney over her assets. Hunter continued, walking over to the liquor cabinet to pour himself a drink. And that includes her half of this house and the trust fund her mother left her. He took a sip of the amber liquid and sighed with satisfaction. I already have a buyer for the property, a developer who wants to tear it down and build condos. We will be out of here by the end of the month. I will put Leo in a boarding school in Switzerland, somewhere far away, somewhere he won't be a burden. I stopped breathing. Switzerland. He wasn't just going to steal the money. He was going to exile my grandson. He was going to ship a 5-year-old boy across the ocean to a cold, sterile dormitory where he would grow up thinking his mother was crazy and his grandfather didn't love him. Hunter turned back to Patricia. And you, my dear Patricia, will be retired. You can take this money and go back to wherever you came from. Buy a nice little condo in Florida. Disappear. Patricia tucked the envelope into the deep pocket of her dress. She patted it twice. I have nowhere to go, Hunter, she said. But the money helps. It helps a lot. She paused, and then she looked up at him. Her eyes were sharp. But you need to be careful, she said. The old man, Elijah, he is not as senile as you think. My heart hammered against my ribs. She was talking about me. Hunter waved his hand dismissively. Elijah is a dinosaur. He is extinct. He just doesn't know it yet. I have the restraining order. If he shows his face here again, I will have him thrown in a cell so fast his head will spin. Patricia shook her head slowly. I saw him watching me, she said. At church, in the parking lot. He was in his truck. He saw the exchange with the supplier. Hunter froze. The glass stopped halfway to his mouth. He saw the exchange. Hunter repeated, his voice losing its warmth. He saw something, Patricia confirmed. And today when he brought that bear, I saw the way he looked at me. It wasn't fear anymore, Hunter. It was hate. Pure hate. That old man is planning something. He is an engineer, remember? He solves problems for a living, and right now, you are the problem. Hunter slammed the glass down on the cabinet. The sound echoed through the laptop speakers like a gunshot. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? He snarled. I am telling you now, Patricia said, keeping her voice steady. You pay me to handle the wife and the kid. You didn't pay me to handle the grandfather. Hunter paced the room, running a hand through his perfect hair. Fine, he spat. If he knows about the supplier, he might try to go to the police. But who would believe him? He is a black man in a white world accusing a pillar of the community. Still, we cannot take risks. Hunter walked up to Patricia until he was inches from her face. Keep an eye on him. If he comes near the house, call me immediately. And Leo, make sure the boy stays quiet. Increase his nightly dose if you have to. I don't want him crying out the window again. Patricia nodded. I will take care of it, she said. Just make sure the rest of the money is ready when the job is done. I stopped the video. I couldn't watch anymore. I pushed the chair back and stood up. My legs were shaking, but not from fear. They were shaking from a rage so pure, so hot it felt like I had swallowed a star. I paced the small confines of my kitchen. I felt like a caged animal. Patricia, the woman I had prayed with, the woman I had trusted. She wasn't just a pawn, she was a partner. She was standing there negotiating her fee for the destruction of my family. She was bargaining for a bonus while my daughter lost her mind and my grandson was drugged into oblivion. And she had warned him about me. She had validated his fears. She had put a target on my back. I walked over to the sink and gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. I looked at my reflection in the window. I looked old. I looked tired. But beneath the wrinkles and the gray hair, I saw something else. I saw the man who had survived poverty, the man who had survived the death of his wife, the man who had built skyscrapers that defied gravity. Hunter thought I was a dinosaur. He thought I was extinct. "You are right, Hunter," I whispered to the empty room. "I am a dinosaur. I am a T-Rex, and I am coming to tear your throat out." I looked back at the laptop screen. The image was frozen on Patricia's face as she patted the pocket with the money. She looked satisfied. She looked smug. "You want money, Patricia?" I hissed, my voice trembling with fury. "You want to retire in Florida?" I grabbed the Ziploc bag with the poison pills. I grabbed the car keys. "I am going to give you a retirement you will never forget." I wasn't going to wait for the police. I wasn't going to wait for a judge. The law was a tool for men like Hunter, men with money and connections. For men like me, the law was a wall. I was going to break the wall. I knew where Patricia lived. I had seen her address in the church directory years ago. It was in the Bottoms, the rough part of town where the street lights didn't work, and the police didn't go unless they were in a squad of 4. It was dangerous. It was reckless. But I had seen the envelope. I had heard the timeline. 2 weeks. I didn't have 2 weeks. I barely had 2 days. I went to my tool shed in the backyard. I bypassed the hammer and the wrench. I reached for something else. I grabbed a heavy-duty roll of duct tape. I grabbed a coil of industrial rope. And I grabbed a tire iron. I wasn't going there to talk. I wasn't going there to pray with her. I was going there to get the truth. And if I had to beat it out of her, I would. "God forgive me for what I'm about to do," I said, looking up at the gray sky. "But if you won't protect your lambs, then the old wolf has to do it." I threw the tools into the passenger seat of my truck. Hunter had made one mistake. He thought money could buy loyalty. He thought greed was the strongest force in the universe. He was wrong. Love is the strongest force, and love fueled by hate is unstoppable. I started the engine. The truck roared to life. "I am coming for you, Patricia. And this time I am not bringing cookies." I drove out of my driveway, leaving tire marks on the pavement. I was driving into the belly of the beast, and I didn't care if I never came back out, as long as I took them down with me. The phone rang at 7:14 in the evening, and the sound cut through the silence of my kitchen like a scream. I was standing by the back door, holding the bag of tools I had gathered for my confrontation with Patricia. I had the tire iron. I had the duct tape. I was ready to go to the Bottoms and force the truth out of that woman. But when that phone rang, I froze. My heart stopped beating for a second because I knew who it was. Only one person called my landline at this hour. I dropped the tool bag and snatched the receiver from the wall. "Hello. Daddy?" The voice was faint. It sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. It was Jasmine. But it wasn't the Jasmine I raised. It wasn't the strong, articulate woman who had graduated with honors. This was the voice of a terrified child. "Jasmine, baby, I am here." I gripped the phone so tight the plastic creaked. "What is happening? Are you okay?" "The snakes, Daddy," she whispered. Her voice was trembling, wet with tears. "The snakes are coming out of the walls. They are everywhere. They are crawling on Leo's bed. I can't stop them." My blood ran cold. There were no snakes in that house. This was the haloperidol talking. This was the poison rewiring her brain, making her see monsters where there was only wallpaper. "Listen to me, Jasmine," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "There are no snakes. It is the medicine. Hunter is giving you bad medicine. You have to get out of there. Grab Leo and run." "I can't run, Daddy," she sobbed. "My legs won't work. They are heavy. Hunter said I am sick. He said I have to go away." "He locked the door, Daddy. He locked us in." Then I heard a sound that made my knees buckle. It was a scream. Not a scream of pain, but a scream of pure, unadulterated terror. "Get away from him!" Jasmine shrieked. "Get away!" Then there was a crash, the sound of glass shattering, and then the line went dead. "Jasmine. Jasmine, answer me." I screamed into the receiver, but there was only silence. The dial tone hummed in my ear, mocking me. I didn't think. I didn't plan. The engineer in me, the man who calculated risks and structural integrity, vanished. All that was left was a father. I ran out the door. I left the tire iron. I left the duct tape. I didn't need tools to interrogate a nanny anymore. I needed to break down a door. I jumped into my truck and floored the gas pedal. The tires screeched as I backed out of the driveway. I drove like a madman. I ran 2 red lights. I drove over a median strip. I didn't care. My daughter was trapped in a house with a man who was systematically destroying her mind, and she was seeing snakes on my grandson's bed. I reached the gated community in 12 minutes. The guard was there, the same one who had turned me away before. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop to argue. I swerved my truck onto the grass embankment next to the guard booth. The heavy suspension of the Ford bounced violently. I heard the undercarriage scrape against rock. The guard shouted, waving his arms, but I was already past him. I roared up the winding streets to Hunter's estate. I parked the truck on the lawn, leaving deep ruts in the pristine grass. I jumped out. The house was dark. Too dark. I ran to the front door and pounded on it with my fist. "Hunter, open this door. Open it or I will break it down." Silence. I stepped back and kicked the door. It was solid oak reinforced with steel. It didn't budge. My bad knee exploded with pain, but I didn't feel it. I ran around to the back of the house. The fence, the 6-foot privacy fence that Hunter had installed last month. I grabbed the wire cutters from my belt, the only tool I had brought with me. I fell to my knees in the dirt. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the handles. I cut the wire. Snap, snap, snap. The sound was loud in the quiet night. I pulled the metal back, creating a hole just big enough for a man to crawl through. I squeezed through, tearing my jacket on the jagged edges. I stood up in the backyard. I was inside. I looked at the back door. It was glass. I could break it. I picked up a heavy decorative stone from the garden path. I took 1 step toward the house, and then the world turned white. Click. Floodlights. Massive, blinding halogen floodlights mounted on the eaves of the house exploded to life. They were aimed directly at me. I was blinded. I threw my hands up to shield my eyes. And then the sound hit me. A siren. Not a burglar alarm. This was an air raid siren, a deafening, high-pitched wail that was designed to disorient and paralyze. Hunter hadn't just installed a security system. He had installed a trap. He knew I would come. He knew I wouldn't be able to stay away. I staggered back, dropping the stone. My ears rang. My vision swam in the white light. "Get down on the ground!" The voice was amplified, coming from a loudspeaker. I squinted through the glare. I saw figures running toward me from the side of the house. Uniforms, private security. They were on me before I could even take a breath. 2 men tackled me. I hit the grass hard. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. My face was pressed into the dirt. I felt a knee in my back, putting pressure on my spine. "Get off me!" I gasped, spitting out grass. "My daughter is inside. She is in danger. Stop resisting!" The guard shouted, twisting my arm behind my back. I struggled. I kicked. I was 70 years old, but I fought with the strength of 10 men. But they were younger. They were stronger. They pinned me down like a rabid dog. Then the blue and red lights washed over the white floodlights. The police. They had arrived too fast. Much too fast. They had been waiting. I was hauled to my feet. My shoulder screamed in agony. A police officer, the same young Officer Miller from the precinct, was standing there with his hand on his holster. "Mr. Thorne," Miller said, shaking his head. "I told you, I warned you, check the house." I screamed, my voice raw. "Check the medicine cabinet. He is drugging her. She called me. She saw snakes." Officer Miller didn't look at the house. He looked at me with disgust. "You broke into a private residence, Mr. Thorne. You destroyed property. You violated a restraining order." I looked up at the house. The balcony door on the 2nd floor opened. Hunter stepped out. He was wearing a silk robe. He held a glass of water in his hand. He looked down at the chaos in his backyard with the calm, detached expression of a king watching a peasant revolt. He shook his head slowly, looking sad, looking disappointed. "Is everyone okay down there?" Hunter called out, his voice projecting perfectly over the dying siren. "Mr. Vance, we have the intruder in custody," Officer Miller shouted back, his tone respectful, deferential. "Oh, thank God." Hunter sighed, placing a hand on his chest. "My wife is terrified, officer. She is having an episode because of the noise. Please take him away. Just take him away before he hurts anyone else." "He is lying," I bellowed, straining against the handcuffs. "He is the one hurting her. Hunter, tell them the truth. Tell them about the haloperidol. Tell them about the chloral hydrate." Hunter looked at me. For a brief second, the mask slipped. He smiled. It was a small, cold smile that only I could see. A smile that said, "I won." Officer Miller shoved me forward. "Let's go, Elijah. You have the right to remain silent." "I don't want to remain silent." I yelled as they dragged me toward the patrol car. "I want you to do your job. Test the pills. Test my grandson's blood." No one listened. The neighbors had come out of their houses, standing on their porches in their pajamas, watching the spectacle. They saw a crazy old black man ranting about poisons. They saw the respectable white businessman shaking his head in sorrow. They saw exactly what Hunter wanted them to see. They pushed me into the back of the police car. The hard plastic seat was cold. The door slammed shut, sealing me in. I pressed my face against the window. I looked up at the house one last time. Hunter had gone back inside. But in the window next to the balcony, the window to Leo's room, I saw a face. It was Jasmine. She was standing there holding Leo. Her hair was wild, sticking up in every direction. Her eyes were wide and vacant, staring out at the flashing lights without comprehending what they were. She looked like a ghost. She looked like she was already dead. She raised a hand slowly and pressed it against the glass. I broke. I slumped against the seat and let the tears come. I sobbed. I wailed. I had failed. I had walked right into his trap. I had tried to be a hero, and I had ended up a criminal. The car engine started. We began to pull away. I watched the house disappear into the darkness. My daughter was in there, my grandson was in there, and I was going to jail. Hunter had taken everything. He had taken my dignity. He had taken my freedom. And now he was going to take their lives. But as the car turned the corner, a cold, hard thought formed in my mind amidst the wreckage of my despair. I am not dead yet. I looked at my hands cuffed behind my back. I flexed my fingers. They can lock me up. They can throw away the key, but they cannot stop the truth. I remembered the Ziploc bag, the bag with the crushed pills. I had left it on Harrison's counter. I hadn't brought it with me. Hunter didn't know about Harrison. He didn't know about the test results. I sat up straight, wiping my face on my shoulder. This wasn't over. This was just the end of the first act. And if I had to burn the whole world down from inside a prison cell to save them, then I would ask for a match. The holding cell smelled of bleach and dried sweat, a combination that burned the back of my throat and reminded me of the hospitals I used to design ventilation systems for. I sat on a steel bench that was bolted to the floor. The metal was so cold it felt like it was leaching the heat directly out of my bones. My shoulder throbbed where the private security guard had twisted my arm, and my clothes were torn and stained with grass and dirt. I was Elijah Thorne. I was 70 years old. I was a man who had built bridges and skyscrapers, a man who had led teams of hundreds. Now I was just a number in a county jail waiting for someone to decide if I was worth releasing. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jasmine's face pressed against the glass of the nursery window. I saw the terror in her eyes. I saw her hand reaching out to me, and then I saw myself being dragged away, leaving her alone with the wolves. Hours bled into one another. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a relentless headache-inducing drone. I watched the shadows stretch across the concrete floor, marking the passage of time that I didn't have. Finally, around 10 in the morning, the heavy steel door at the end of the corridor clanked open. A guard walked down the hallway, his keys jingling with a sound that grated on my nerves. He stopped in front of my cell. "Thorne, you made bail." I stood up, my knees popping. I walked out of the cell without saying a word. I followed the guard to the processing desk where I was handed a plastic bag containing my wallet, my keys, and my belt. I put my belt on with trembling hands, trying to regain some shred of dignity. When I walked out into the lobby, Harrison was waiting for me. My old friend looked like he had aged 10 years in a single night. Harrison was a man who usually stood tall with the posture of a former military doctor, but today his shoulders were slumped. He was holding a cup of lukewarm coffee and staring at the floor. When he looked up and saw me, there was no relief in his eyes, only a deep, profound sorrow. "Elijah," he said quietly. I walked over to him. I didn't ask about the bail money. I didn't ask about the charges. I grabbed his arm. "Where is she, Harrison? Where is Jasmine?" Harrison looked away. He couldn't meet my gaze. He took a breath, a shaky, ragged sound that told me everything before he even spoke a word. "They took her, Elijah. It happened early this morning, right after they brought you here." "Took her where?" I demanded, my voice rising, echoing in the sterile lobby. "Hunter called an ambulance. Harrison said, forcing the words out. He claimed Jasmine attacked him. He said she came at him with a carving knife, claiming he was a giant snake. He showed the paramedics a cut on his arm. It was superficial, Elijah, a scratch, really, but it was enough. A snake, I whispered. The hallucination, the haloperidol. Harrison nodded grimly. The paramedics saw a woman screaming about reptiles and a husband bleeding from a defensive wound. They didn't have a choice. They initiated an involuntary psychiatric hold. Hunter signed the papers immediately. She has been transferred to St. Jude's Behavioral Health Center. St. Jude's. The name hit me like a physical blow. It was a private facility in the next county known for its discretion and its high walls. It was a place where rich families hid their embarrassing relatives. It was a place where people went in and didn't come out. I have to go there, I said, starting to move toward the door. I have to tell the doctors about the drugs. I have the evidence in your kitchen, Harrison. We can prove it. Harrison grabbed my arm. His grip was surprisingly strong. Stop, Elijah. You can't go there. Why not? I snarled, trying to shake him off. She is my daughter. Because Hunter has blocked you, Harrison said, his voice breaking. He filed the restraining order with the hospital. You are listed as a trigger for her trauma. If you step foot on that property, they will arrest you again. And this time there will be no bail. You are legally a danger to her, Elijah. I slumped against the wall. The fight drained out of me, leaving only a hollow, aching void. They had taken her. They had locked her away in a place where I couldn't reach her. And they had used the law, the very thing meant to protect her, to do it. Come on, Harrison said, gently guiding me toward the exit. Let's get you out of here. There are reporters outside. Reporters? I asked, confused. Why would there be reporters? Harrison didn't answer. He just pushed the door open and led me into the blinding sunlight. The moment we stepped onto the sidewalk, cameras flashed. Microphones were thrust into my face. Mr. Thorne, is it true you attacked your son-in-law? Mr. Thorne, do you have a history of mental illness? Why did you try to break into the house while your grandson was sleeping? I shielded my eyes, looking at the sea of hungry faces. They didn't see a grandfather trying to save his family. They saw a story. A scandalous, sensational headline. Harrison pulled me through the crowd, shoving reporters aside until we reached his car. We climbed in, and he locked the doors. As we drove away, I saw a news van parked on the corner. On the side of the van, a monitor was playing a broadcast. It was Hunter. He was standing on his front porch, the perfect picture of a grieving, exhausted husband. He was wearing a simple sweater, his hair slightly mussed. He wiped a tear from his eye as he spoke to the camera. It is a tragedy, really, Hunter was saying, his voice thick with emotion. We have tried to help Elijah for years. He has never accepted that his daughter is grown. But his dementia has taken a violent turn. He broke into our home, terrified our son, and caused my poor wife to have a breakdown. I just pray he gets the help he needs. We forgive him, but we must protect ourselves. I stared at the screen as we drove past. The narrative was set. He was the saint. I was the sinner. He was the victim. I was the villain. Harrison drove in silence for a long time. The city passed by a blur of concrete and glass. Finally, he pulled up in front of my house. It looked small and lonely compared to the fortress I had tried to storm last night. Elijah, Harrison said, turning off the engine, listen to me. You are in a very bad position. The charges against you are serious. Breaking and entering, assault, violation of a court order. If we are lucky, we might be able to plead it down to probation, but you have to stay quiet. You have to let me handle the legal side. Do not go near Hunter. Do not go near that hospital. I looked at my friend. I saw the fear in his eyes. He was a good man, a man who believed in rules, a man who believed that eventually the truth would come out in a courtroom. I nodded slowly. You are right, Harrison. I made a mistake. I let my temper get the best of me. Harrison sighed with relief. Good. Go inside. Get some sleep. We will formulate a defense strategy tomorrow. I watched him drive away. I stood on my driveway listening to the wind rustle the leaves of the oak tree I had planted when Jasmine was born. I walked inside my house. It was quiet. The silence was heavy, suffocating. I walked into the kitchen. The Ziploc bag was still on the table where Harrison had left it the night before. The white powder inside the bag looked innocent like sugar, but it was poison. I sat down at the table. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the gloom, letting the anger wash over me. Harrison was wrong. The legal strategy was dead. The law was dead. Hunter had bought the law. He had manipulated the doctors, the police, the media. He had built a fortress of lies so high and so thick that no lawyer could breach it. I looked at my hands. They were rough, calloused hands. Hands that knew how to work. Hands that knew how to fix things. Hunter thought he had won because he had silenced me legally. He thought that because I couldn't go to the police, I would give up. He thought I would sit in this house and wait for my court date while he sold my daughter's house and shipped my grandson to Switzerland. He didn't know me. He didn't know that when a bridge is compromised, you don't wait for a permit to fix it. You shore it up. You do whatever it takes to keep it from collapsing. I wasn't going to court. I wasn't going to hire a defense attorney. I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the street. The world looked different now. The colors were sharper. The edges were harder. I was no longer a citizen of a civilized society. I was a man in the jungle. And in the jungle, you don't ask for permission to survive. I needed information. I needed to know exactly what Hunter was planning. I needed to know the name of the doctor at St. Jude's. I needed to know where the money was. And there was only one person who knew all of that. Patricia, the woman who sold her soul for $5,000. The woman who warned Hunter about me. The woman who held my grandson down while she poisoned him. I wasn't going to kidnap her. No, that was too crude. Kidnapping implied a ransom. Kidnapping implied I wanted something in exchange. I didn't want a trade. I wanted a confession. I went to the garage. I found the duct tape I had left behind the night before. I found the industrial rope. And I found something else. A portable tape recorder. The old kind with the cassette tapes. The kind I used to use on construction sites to record field notes. I checked the batteries. They were good. Patricia lived in the Bottoms. It was a dangerous place, a place where people disappeared, a place where screams were often ignored. Perfect. I checked my watch. It was 2 in the afternoon. Patricia would be at her apartment now, packing for her retirement, dreaming of Florida, dreaming of the sun. She was going to get a surprise visit. I put on my dark work coat. I pulled a baseball cap low over my eyes. I wasn't Elijah Thorne, the engineer, anymore. I wasn't the grieving grandfather. I was the consequence. I walked out to my truck. I didn't care about the flat tire I had driven on yesterday. I had changed it this morning in a frenzy of adrenaline. The truck was ready. I was ready. I backed out of the driveway. I didn't look at the empty swing set in the backyard. I didn't look at the flower beds Jasmine used to plant. I kept my eyes on the road to the Bottoms, the road to the truth. Hunter Vance wanted to play dirty. He wanted to use drugs and lies and restraining orders. Fine, Hunter. Let's play. But you are going to learn that the old man you laughed at the dinosaur you called extinct has teeth. And tonight those teeth are going to bite. The neighborhood they called the Bottoms was a place where hope went to die. The streetlights here had been broken since the Reagan administration, and the sidewalks were cracked veins running through a body of decaying brick and boarded-up windows. I drove my truck slowly, keeping my headlights off, rolling through the shadows like a shark in dark water. I was following the bus that Patricia had taken from the wealthy suburbs. It was a long ride from the manicured lawns of Hunter's estate to this hellhole, but Patricia made it every day. I watched as the bus hissed to a stop at the corner of 4th and Martin Luther King Boulevard. Patricia stepped off. She looked different here. In Hunter's house, she walked with her head down, subservient and quiet. Here she walked with a heavy, hurried gait, clutching her oversized purse to her chest. She knew the dangers of these streets. She knew that $5,000 in cash made her a walking target, but she didn't know the real danger was following 20 feet behind her in a rusted Ford pickup. I parked the truck in an alleyway and grabbed the tire iron. The metal was cold and heavy in my hand. It felt good. It felt like justice. I pulled my cap down low and stepped out into the humid air that smelled of urine and old frying grease. I wasn't Elijah Thorne, the respected engineer, anymore. I was a grandfather who had watched his grandson die a little bit every night on a computer screen. I was a man who had nothing left to lose. Patricia turned into a narrow alleyway that served as a shortcut to a crumbling apartment complex. It was a tunnel of brick and darkness. Perfect. I quickened my pace. My boots made no sound on the damp pavement. I had learned to move quietly in the last 24 hours. Hate is a very effective teacher. "Patricia," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the confined space of the alley it sounded like a thunderclap. She froze. Her shoulders stiffened. She didn't turn around immediately. She just stood there, gripping her purse. "Who is there?" she whispered. Her voice was trembling. I stepped into the circle of dim light cast by a single flickering bulb above a service door. "You know who it is," I said, raising the tire iron. "It is the dinosaur. It is the extinct old man you warned Hunter about." Patricia turned around slowly. Her eyes went wide when she saw the weapon in my hand. She backed up until her back hit the brick wall. There was nowhere to run. "Mr. Elijah," she stammered, "please, you don't understand. I understand perfectly." I stepped closer, closing the distance between us. "I understand that you sold a 5-year-old boy for an envelope of cash. I understand that you held his mouth open while you poured poison down his throat. I saw you, Patricia. I saw everything. I raised the tire iron. I didn't want to hit her. I wanted to scare the truth out of her. I wanted to see her break. How much is a child's life worth, Patricia?" I roared, slamming the tire iron against the brick wall inches from her head. Sparks flew. $5,000. Is that the price of a soul these days? Patricia flinched, but she didn't scream. She didn't beg for mercy. Instead, she did something that stopped me cold. She started to cry. Not the fake whimpering tears she used in front of Hunter. These were silent, heavy tears of pure exhaustion. She dropped her purse. It hit the wet pavement with a heavy thud. "Go ahead," she said, her voice cracking. "Hit me. Kill me. Maybe then I can finally rest." I hesitated. This wasn't the reaction of a cold-blooded mercenary. This was the reaction of a woman who was carrying a burden too heavy for her shoulders. "Open the bag," I commanded, pointing the tire iron at her purse. "Show me the poison." Patricia slowly knelt down. Her hands were shaking. She unzipped the bag. She didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a thick, tattered notebook, and next to it she pulled out a blender bottle filled with a dark red liquid. "It isn't poison, Mr. Elijah," she sobbed, holding up the bottle. "It is beets." I stared at her. "Beets. It is beet juice mixed with milk thistle and dandelion root," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "It is a liver detox. It helps flush the toxins out of his system." I lowered the tire iron slightly. "You are lying. I saw him pass out. I saw his eyes roll back. That is because I put melatonin in it." She explained, speaking faster, now desperate to make me understand. "I have to knock him out, Mr. Elijah. If he is awake, he cries. If he cries, Hunter comes in. And when Hunter comes in, he brings the needle." The needle. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. I lowered the tire iron completely. My heart was pounding in my chest, but the rhythm had changed. It wasn't rage anymore. It was confusion. "Talk," I said. "And God help you if I catch you in a lie." Patricia took a deep breath. She opened the notebook. The pages were filled with handwriting. Dates, times, dosages. "Hunter is a pharmacist," she said. "He knows exactly how much haloperidol to give Jasmine to keep her crazy, but not kill her. He knows exactly how much sedative to give Leo to keep him quiet. I figured it out 3 months ago. I saw him mixing the powders in the kitchen." "Why didn't you go to the police?" I asked. Patricia looked at me with a sad, weary smile. "Look at me, Mr. Elijah. I am a 50-year-old black woman from the bottoms with a record for shoplifting from 20 years ago. Who are they going to believe? The rich white man in the big house or the help?" She tapped the notebook. "So I stayed. I played the part. I pretended to be his loyal servant. I took his money. I let him think I was greedy. Because if I left, he would hire someone else. Someone who wouldn't care. Someone who wouldn't switch the bottles." "Switch the bottles?" I asked. "I have been swapping Jasmine's pills for sugar pills whenever I can," Patricia said. "But I can't do it all the time or he will notice she's getting better. And Leo. I tell him scary stories. I tell him his daddy hates him. I tell him monsters are coming." "Why? Why would you terrorize a child?" "Because fear keeps him alive," Patricia said, her voice fierce. "If he is scared of his father, he won't eat the food Hunter gives him. He won't take the candy. I made myself the villain, Mr. Elijah. I made him hate me so he would run to you." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. I had been so sure. I had been so ready to destroy her. But she had been fighting the same war I was, just from the inside. "And the money?" I asked, pointing to the envelope sticking out of her purse. "The $5,000. Patricia opened the notebook to the back page. Taped there was a business card for a private investigator. Hunter Vance isn't his real name. she whispered, leaning in close. His real name is Stephen Caldwell. He has a warrant for insurance fraud in Ohio. He changed his name 5 years ago. I used his money to hire a detective. I just got the file yesterday. She handed me the notebook. I looked at the report. It was all there. The fraud, the identity theft, the previous wife who died under mysterious circumstances. I looked at Patricia. I saw the bruises on her arms that I hadn't noticed before, bruises from where she had likely intercepted Hunter's rage to protect my grandson. I dropped the tire iron. It clattered on the pavement. "I am sorry," I whispered. My voice broke. "I am so sorry, Patricia." Patricia reached out and took my hand. Her hand was warm and rough. "Don't be sorry, Mr. Elijah. We don't have time for sorry. We have a problem." "What problem?" I asked. "Hunter is moving the timeline up," she said, her face grim. "He knows you are on to him. He knows you broke into the house. He is scared. And a scared man is a dangerous man." She looked around the alley to make sure we were alone. "I heard him on the phone today. He isn't sending Leo to Switzerland. He took out a life insurance policy on the boy last week. $2 million. My blood turned to ice. "He is going to kill him," I said. "Tomorrow night," Patricia said. "He told me to give Leo a double dose of the sedative. He said he wants him to sleep peacefully. He is going to make it look like an allergic reaction, anaphylactic shock. He has a syringe prepared." I grabbed Patricia by the shoulders. "We have to stop him. We have to go to the police now. We have this notebook. We have the PI report. It is not enough." Patricia shook her head. "The report proves he is a fraud, but it doesn't prove he is a murderer. If we go to the police now, he will get a lawyer. He will bail out. And then he will disappear with Leo. We need to catch him in the act." "In the act," I repeated. "You want us to let him try to kill my grandson." "I want us to save your grandson," Patricia said. "I have a plan, but I can't do it alone. I need you. I need the engineer." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small black button. It looked like a button from a coat, but I recognized it immediately. It was a camera lens. "You bought this at the spy shop?" I asked. "I saw the receipt in your truck when you came to the church." She smiled. "Great minds think alike, Mr. Elijah. Here is the plan," she said, her voice hardening. "Tomorrow night I am going to wear this. I am going to go into that room. I am going to let Hunter think he has won. I am going to let him pull out that needle, and I am going to record every second of it. It is too dangerous," I said. "If he sees the camera, he will kill you. He is going to kill that boy if I don't," Patricia said. "I am ready to die if it means Leo lives." "Are you—" I looked at this woman, this saint in a floral dress who lived in the bottoms. She had more courage in her little finger than I had in my whole body. I picked up the tire iron, not to use it on her, but to hold it as a promise. "No one is going to die tomorrow, Patricia," I said, "except maybe a monster named Hunter Vance." We stood there in the dark alley, two old soldiers forming an alliance that would bring down a fortress. "Get in the truck," I said. "We have work to do." Patricia nodded and picked up her bag. "Let's go get our boy," she said. We walked out of the alley together, leaving the darkness behind us, the dinosaur and the witch. We were an army of two, and we were going to war. Patricia's apartment was a small fortress of faith located in the heart of a war zone. The walls were thin and painted a peeling shade of yellow, but they were covered in crosses and framed scriptures that seemed to hold the crumbling plaster together. Outside I could hear the distant wail of sirens and the heavy bass of passing cars, but inside there was a terrifying quiet. We sat at her small kitchen table under the hum of a single flickering fluorescent bulb. The table was covered in the documents she had gathered over months of silent observation. It was a map of hell, and Hunter Vance was the devil sitting at the center of it. I picked up the financial report from the private investigator. My hands shook as I read the numbers. I was an engineer. I dealt with loads and stress factors. I knew that every structure had a breaking point, and Hunter Vance was a structure that was about to collapse. The man who wore Italian suits and drank $1,000 scotch was not just broke. He was drowning. $5 million. I whispered the number, feeling the weight of it in my chest. "He owes $5 million to the Ivanov crime syndicate." Patricia nodded, her face grim in the harsh light. "Gambling debts, Mr. Elijah. It started with sports betting, then it moved to high-stakes poker. He lost everything before he even met your daughter. He married Jasmine for her inheritance. He bought that big house on credit using her trust fund as collateral. But now the loan sharks are calling. They gave him a deadline. I looked at the date on the report. The deadline was Friday, 2 days from now. If he doesn't pay them, they will kill him, Patricia said, pouring us both a cup of strong black coffee. And Hunter is a coward. He won't let himself be killed. He will sacrifice anyone to save his own skin. I looked at the insurance papers spread out next to the gambling debts. It was a sick equation, a math problem written in blood. The house sale would bring in $2 million. Jasmine's trust fund was another $1 million, but he was still short. That is why he needs Leo. I said, my voice trembling with rage. The life insurance policy. $2 million. Patricia reached across the table and tapped a specific document. It was a medical history form for Leo. It listed a severe allergy to peanuts. An allergy so severe that even trace amounts could cause his throat to close up. He isn't going to send the boy to Switzerland, Patricia said softly. That was a lie he told me to keep me quiet. He is planning an accident. A tragic, unavoidable accident. My stomach churned. I pushed the coffee away. I felt like I was going to be sick. How? I asked. How is he going to do it? Patricia took a deep breath. She looked older than her 50 years in that moment. Her eyes were haunted by the things she had seen and the things she had heard while scrubbing floors and washing dishes. He brought a vial home yesterday from the pharmaceutical lab, she said. It isn't labeled, but I heard him on the phone with his bookie. He called it the vaccine. It is a concentrated peanut oil extract, pure, potent. He plans to inject it directly into Leo's bloodstream. I slammed my fist onto the table. The cups rattled. Inject it. I roared, that is insane. The autopsy would show the puncture mark. The medical examiner would find the oil. He is a pharmacist, Mr. Elijah. Patricia countered, her voice steady. He knows how to hide it. He plans to inject it between the toes where no one looks. And he is going to claim Leo ate a cookie that I baked. He is going to blame me. He is going to say the stupid old nanny made a mistake and contaminated the food. I stared at her. The cruelty was breathtaking. He was going to murder his son and frame the woman who had been protecting him. He would walk away with the money, the grieving father who lost everything. The community would rally around him. They would bring him casseroles. They would pity him. And Leo would be cold in the ground. We cannot let this happen, I said, standing up and pacing the small kitchen. We have to go to the police now. We show them this debt. We show them the insurance policy. They won't get there in time, Patricia said. And even if they do, Hunter will deny it. He will say the debt is a lie. He will say the insurance is just good parenting. Without the weapon, without proof of intent, he walks free. And if he walks free, he disappears with Leo. We need to catch him holding the needle. I stopped pacing. I looked at the small black button camera sitting on the table. It looked like nothing. A piece of plastic. But it was the only weapon we had. So we go with the plan, I said. Patricia picked up the button. She held it up to the light. Her hands were steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. Tomorrow night is Thursday, she said. He wants the money before the Friday deadline. He told me to give Leo a double dose of the sedative at dinner. He wants him unconscious so he doesn't struggle. He's going to come into the room at 10 o'clock. You are going to sew this onto your cardigan, I said, picking up the camera. It has a battery life of 2 hours. You need to turn it on exactly at 9:30. I will be in the room, Patricia said. I will tell him I am checking on the boy. When he pulls out that syringe, I will be standing right there. I will capture his face. I will capture the needle. And then I will scream. Screaming won't stop a needle, Patricia, I said, grabbing her shoulders. He is a desperate man. If he realizes what you are doing, he will kill you both. That is why you will be there, she said, looking me in the eye. You said you are an engineer. You said you know how to break things. I need you to break down that door the second you hear my signal. I nodded. I had the truck. I had the rage. I would drive through the wall if I had to. But there is a risk, I said, my voice low. A terrible risk. If the camera fails, or if he moves too fast, or if the police are too slow. Then we die, Patricia said simply. She reached out and touched the cross around her neck. Mr. Elijah, I have lived a hard life. I have made mistakes. But that little boy is the only pure thing I have ever known. If I have to trade my life for his, that is a bargain I am willing to make. I looked at this woman, this stranger, who had become my only ally. I saw the strength of a mountain in her. We are going to make sure that doesn't happen, I said. We are going to test this equipment until it is perfect. We are going to rehearse every step. For the next 6 hours, we turned that kitchen into a command center. I used my engineering skills to wire the camera securely into her sweater using duct tape and safety pins to ensure it wouldn't shift. We tested the angle, we tested the audio. I made her walk back and forth practicing how to stand so the camera would have a clear view of the bed. We went over the timeline again and again. 9 p.m. Patricia gives Leo the fake sedative, the beet juice. 9:30. Patricia turns on the camera. 9:45. I park my truck in the woods behind the property. 10 p.m. Hunter enters. It was a heist. But we weren't stealing money. We were stealing a life back from the jaws of death. As the sun began to rise over the bottoms, painting the dirty streets in a soft orange light, we sat back in our chairs, exhausted. "You should sleep, Mr. Elijah," Patricia said. "You need your strength for tonight." "I can't sleep," I said, rubbing my eyes. "I keep thinking about Jasmine. She is alone in that hospital. She doesn't know what is happening." "We are doing this for her, too," Patricia said. "When we send Hunter to prison, she gets her life back. She gets her son back." I stood up and gathered my things. I checked the tape recorder in my pocket. I checked the tire iron. "I will be waiting in the woods," I said. "When you scream," Patricia, scream loud. Scream like the world is ending. Because for Hunter, Vance, it will be. I walked out of the apartment building and into the cool morning air. The city was waking up. People were going to work, drinking coffee, living their normal lives. They had no idea that tonight, in a mansion on the hill, a battle between good and evil was going to be fought. I got into my truck. I didn't go home. I drove to the edge of the woods, near the gated community. I parked under a dense canopy of trees and reclined my seat. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I visualized the layout of the house. I visualized the angle of the driveway. I visualized the impact of my truck hitting the front door. I was Elijah Thorne. I was 70 years old. I was tired. I was scared. But tonight I was going to be the monster Hunter feared. Tonight the dinosaur bites back. The woods behind Hunter's estate were pitch black, a wall of shadows that seemed to swallow the light from the moon. I was parked deep in the brush, my truck covered with a camouflage tarp I had bought at the Army surplus store. I was invisible to the outside world, but inside the cab, the glow of my laptop screen illuminated my face like a ghost. My heart was beating a rhythm against my ribs that felt dangerous, a frantic drumbeat of adrenaline and terror. I was 70 years old, and I was about to watch a murder attempt live in high definition. On the screen, the image from the button camera was grainy but clear. Patricia was standing in the corner of Leo's room. She was wearing the beige cardigan we had prepared, the one with the camera sewn into the second button. She was pretending to fold laundry, her hands moving over the small shirts and pants, but I could see the stiffness in her shoulders. She was terrified. She was a woman of faith, standing in the lion's den, waiting for the beast to arrive. Leo was in his bed, a small lump under the blue duvet. He wasn't moving. The double dose of sedative Patricia had given him earlier had done its work. He looked like he was already dead, and the sight made bile rise in my throat. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my leather gloves creaked. "Hold on, Patricia," I whispered to the empty truck. "Just hold on." At 10 o'clock sharp, the door handle turned. I held my breath. Hunter walked into the room. He wasn't wearing his suit tonight. He was wearing black nitrile gloves, the kind doctors use during surgery. He wore a dark polo shirt and slacks. He looked casual, relaxed even. That was what chilled me to the bone. He wasn't sweating, he wasn't pacing. He looked like a man who was about to take out the trash, not a father about to kill his son. He closed the door softly behind him and locked it. The click of the lock echoed through my laptop speakers, loud and final. Hunter turned to Patricia. He didn't smile. "Is he out?" he asked. His voice was a whisper, but in the silence of the room it sounded like a shout. Patricia nodded. She didn't trust herself to speak. She just pointed to the bed. "Good." Hunter walked over to the nightstand. He placed a small silver case on the wood surface. He opened it with a precise clinical movement. Inside, lying on a bed of velvet, was a syringe. It was already filled. The liquid inside was clear, thick, and deadly. The peanut oil extract. The weapon that would close my grandson's throat and stop his heart in minutes. I watched as Hunter picked up the syringe. He tapped the side of it to remove any air bubbles. He held it up to the light, checking the dosage. It was a gesture I had seen him make 1,000 times at family dinners when he was checking a bottle of wine. It was muscle memory. It was routine. Patricia took a step forward. This was the moment. We had rehearsed this. She needed to get close enough to capture his face and the needle in the same frame. She needed the evidence that would send him to prison for the rest of his life. "Mr. Hunter," Patricia said, her voice trembling slightly. "Are you sure about this?" Hunter didn't look at her. He was focused on the needle. Don't start getting a conscience now, Patricia. You have your money, you have your retirement. Just stand there and keep watch. If he wakes up, hold him down. He walked toward the bed. He pulled the duvet back, exposing Leo's small foot. He was going for the injection site between the toes, just like Patricia had said. It was the perfect crime. No marks, no bruises, just a tragic allergic reaction that no one could explain. Patricia moved. She stepped between Hunter and the bed. She turned her chest toward him, aiming the button camera directly at his hands. "Please, sir," she pleaded. "He is just a boy. Look at him. He looks just like his mother." Hunter stopped. He looked up, his eyes cold and dead. "That is the problem, Patricia. He looks like her. He acts like her. And he is expensive like her." He tried to step around her, but Patricia moved again, blocking his path. She was trying to buy time. She was trying to get the perfect angle, but she was too close. She was too nervous. I leaned closer to the screen, screaming in my head, "Back up, Patricia. Back up. He is going to see it. See." And then it happened. Patricia's hand, the one she was using to clutch her cardigan, closed nervously around the fabric. It was a small movement, a tick of fear, but Hunter saw it. He was a predator. He noticed weakness. He noticed irregularities. He froze. His eyes dropped from her face to her chest. He looked at the way she was standing stiff and unnatural, facing him squarely instead of turning away. He looked at her hand clutching the fabric near the second button. "Why are you shaking, Patricia?" Hunter asked softly. "I am scared, sir," she stammered. "I have never seen a man die before." Hunter didn't buy it. His eyes narrowed into slits. He took a step closer. The needle was still in his right hand, but his left hand reached out. "You are sweating," he said. "You are sweating, and you are standing in my way. You never stand in my way, Patricia. You always cower." He reached for her. Patricia tried to pull back, but she wasn't fast enough. Hunter grabbed the lapel of her cardigan. He yanked it forward. "What is this?" he hissed. He saw the wire. He saw the small bulge of the battery pack taped to the inside of the fabric. I watched in horror as the realization washed over his face. It wasn't fear. It was a white, hot fury. "You brought a wire into my house." He roared. He ripped the cardigan. The sound of fabric tearing was sickening. The button the camera popped off. On my screen the world went dizzy. The image spun wildly, floor, ceiling, wall, floor, as the camera fell. It hit the hardwood with a crack. The video feed didn't cut out, but the angle was now useless. It was staring sideways at the baseboard under the bed. I could see Hunter's shoes. I could see Patricia's orthopedic shoes. But I couldn't see their faces. But the audio. The audio was still perfect. And it was terrifying. "You stupid old woman." Hunter screamed. "Who are you working for? Is it Elijah? Is it that dinosaur?" I heard a thud. A heavy, meaty sound. Patricia cried out. It was a sharp gasp of pain. I saw her shoes slide backward across the floor. She had fallen. He had hit her. "Please, Hunter," she begged. "Stop. It is over. The police are coming." "You think I care about the police?" Hunter laughed, but it sounded like the bark of a jackal. "You think a recording is going to stop me? You just signed your death warrant, Patricia. And his." I heard a metallic click. It wasn't the click of a door. It was the slide of a pistol. I saw Hunter's shoes move. He walked to the dresser. I heard him rummage through a drawer. Then I saw him walk back into the frame, or at least his legs did. He was holding something in his other hand now. I couldn't see it, but I knew what it was. A silencer. He was screwing it onto the barrel of a gun. Change of plans. Hunter said, his voice calm again, eerily calm. "We aren't doing the allergy accident anymore. That is too complicated now. We are going with a burglary scenario." I heard the screw tighten. "Here is the story, Patricia. You went crazy. You snapped. You tried to kidnap the boy. I came in and found you holding him hostage. We struggled. You shot the boy. And then I, being the heroic father, had to shoot you to stop you." "Number," Patricia sobbed. "You can't do that." "Watch me," Hunter said. I heard him rack the slide. "It is cleaner this way, actually. No autopsy questions about peanut oil. Just a crazy nanny and a dead kid. The community will build a statue in my honor." I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't wait for the signal. The plan was dead. Patricia was on the ground and Hunter had a gun. I slammed my hand onto the gear shift of my truck. I turned the ignition. The engine roared to life, a beast waking up in the woods. I didn't care about stealth anymore. I slammed my foot onto the gas pedal. The truck surged forward, crashing through the brush, snapping branches like toothpicks. I was coming. I was coming to kill him. But back in the room, something happened that stopped Hunter cold. A voice. Small and terrified. "Daddy!" I froze for a split second listening. Leo. He was awake. The shouting, the fall, the noise had broken through the sedative fog. I heard the rustle of sheets. I saw small bare feet drop from the bed onto the floor right in front of the camera lens. Leo was standing there. He was standing between the killer and the nanny. "Daddy, why do you have a gun?" Leo asked, his voice trembling with sleep and fear. "Why is Grandma Patricia crying?" Hunter didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched out for a second, 2 seconds. "Go back to sleep, Leo," Hunter said. His voice was tight, strained. "This is a bad dream." Leo didn't move. He looked at Patricia lying on the floor. He saw the blood on her lip. "You hurt her," Leo whispered. "You are the monster. Grandpa said the monsters would come." "Shut up," Hunter snapped. "Get away from her." "No," Leo shouted, and then he did the bravest thing I had ever seen. He threw himself over Patricia. He covered her body with his small frame. "Leave her alone," he screamed. "Grandpa! Grandpa, help!" His scream pierced the night. It pierced the microphone. It pierced my heart. Hunter sighed, a sound of pure inconvenience. "Fine," Hunter said. "If you want to die hugging the help, then so be it." I heard the safety click off. I screamed inside the truck cab, a primal roar of fury. "Hold on, Leo." I aimed the truck at the back of the house. I wasn't going for the front door this time. I was going for the wall. I was going for the structural weakness I had identified on the blueprints 30 years ago when this house was built. I was going to bring the house down. I floored it. The truck hit 60 miles per hour on the grass. The wall of the house loomed large in my headlights, white and solid. I braced for impact. This is for Jasmine. This is for Leo. And then the world exploded. The sound of a gunshot transmitted through a tiny microphone is a dry and hollow pop. It does not sound like thunder. It sounds like a book falling flat on a floor or a balloon bursting in another room. But when I heard that sound coming from my laptop speakers inside the cab of my truck, the world stopped spinning. I stopped breathing. The darkness of the woods seemed to crush the windows. I looked at the waveform on the audio software. It spiked red and then flatlined into silence. There was no scream. There was no crying. Just a terrible ringing silence that stretched on for 1 second, then 2, then 3. My grandson was in that room, Patricia was in that room, and Hunter had a gun with a silencer. I did not think about the legal consequences. I did not think about my own safety. The engineer in me, the part of my brain that calculated risks and safety margins, simply shut down. All that was left was the grandfather. All that was left was the primal instinct to protect the blood of my blood. I grabbed the gear shift of my old Ford truck. It was a heavy machine built in an era when steel was cheap and safety ratings were an afterthought. It was a battering ram on wheels. I shifted into drive and slammed my foot onto the gas pedal until it hit the floorboard. The engine roared a guttural scream that shook the frame. The tires spun in the loose dirt of the woods, kicking up a storm of debris before finding traction on the asphalt of the service road. I did not turn on my headlights. I was a missile flying in the dark, guided only by the hate burning in my chest. The back gate of Hunter's estate was a decorative wrought iron structure designed to keep out solicitors and stray dogs. It was not designed to stop 3 tons of accelerating American steel. I hit it at 50 miles per hour. The metal shrieked as it tore from the hinges, flying into the manicured garden like shrapnel. I didn't lift my foot. The truck bucked violently, tossing me against the door, but I gripped the steering wheel with hands that felt like iron claws. The house loomed ahead. It was a white colonial mansion glowing softly in the moonlight, a monument to Hunter's greed and my daughter's prison. I aimed for the front entrance. I knew the layout. The front door opened into a grand foyer with a staircase that led directly to the second-floor landing. It was the fastest route to Leo. I braced myself. I locked my elbows. I screamed my grandson's name. The impact was like a bomb going off. The front doors exploded inward in a shower of wood splinters and glass. The truck plowed through the frame, crushing the expensive marble tile of the foyer. The airbag detonated, punching me in the face with the force of a prizefighter. Dust and drywall filled the air, choking me, blinding me. The horn was stuck, blaring a continuous note of warning that echoed through the shattered house. I gasped for air, tasting blood and airbag dust. My vision swam. My chest hurt where the seatbelt had dug in. But I was alive, and I was inside. I kicked the driver's side door open. It groaned and fell off its hinges. I stumbled out of the wreckage, my legs feeling like rubber. The house was screaming. Alarms were blaring. The horn was honking. But through the chaos, I heard a voice upstairs. "He is here." It was Hunter. I grabbed the tire iron from the passenger seat. I limped toward the stairs. My bad knee was screaming with every step, sending jolts of agony up my spine, but I pushed it down. I fed the pain to the fire in my belly. I started up the stairs. 1 step, 2 steps. Hunter appeared at the top of the landing. He still had the gun in his hand. He looked wild, his hair disheveled, his eyes wide with shock and fury. He looked down at the destruction in his foyer, at the truck smoking in his living room, and then he looked at me. "You crazy old man," he screamed. "You destroyed my house." I didn't answer. I kept climbing. I was the Terminator. I was the Judgment Day he never believed would come. Hunter raised the gun. He didn't hesitate. He didn't warn me. He just pulled the trigger. The silencer made a soft spitting sound. I felt a punch in my left shoulder. It spun me around. I stumbled, slamming into the banister. A hot, searing pain radiated down my arm. My hand went numb. I looked down and saw the hole in my jacket, saw the dark stain spreading rapidly. He had shot me. I looked up. Hunter was aiming again. He was going to finish it. I needed cover. I threw myself to the side, rolling onto the landing. Another bullet chipped the wood where my head had been a second ago. I scrambled on my hands and knees, dragging my useless left arm behind me. I crawled behind a heavy oak console table in the hallway. "Come out, Elijah," Hunter taunted, his voice getting closer. "You want to save him. Come and save him. He is still breathing. For now." My heart hammered against the floorboards. I was bleeding. I was armed only with a tire iron against a gun. I was 70 years old and I was losing. I needed an advantage. I needed a weapon that wasn't a weapon. I looked around the hallway. My eyes landed on a red canister mounted on the wall near the linen closet. A fire extinguisher. It was a standard dry chemical model, class ABC. I remembered the safety specs. The powder inside was monoammonium phosphate. It was fine. It was corrosive, and if sprayed directly into the face, it caused immediate respiratory distress and temporary blindness. I crawled toward it, keeping my head low. Hunter fired again. The bullet punched through the wall, inches above my back, showering me with plaster dust. I reached up and grabbed the extinguisher. I pulled the pin. My hand was shaking, but my mind was clear. I waited. I listened to his footsteps. He was walking confidently now, thinking I was cowering, thinking I was bleeding out. He was right about the bleeding, but he was wrong about the cowering. I heard his shoe crunch on a piece of broken glass just around the corner of the table. Now. I rolled onto my back and squeezed the handle. A massive cloud of white powder exploded from the nozzle. It hit Hunter full in the face. He screamed. He dropped the gun, clutching his eyes. The powder filled the hallway, a thick, choking fog. "My eyes!" he shrieked. "I can't see!" I dropped the extinguisher and lunged. I slammed my body into his, knocking him to the floor. We crashed down together, a tangle of limbs and rage. The gun skittered away across the hardwood floor, lost in the white dust. I raised the tire iron with my good hand. I wanted to end it. I wanted to crush his skull. But Hunter was younger. He was desperate, and even blind, he was strong. He flailed wildly, his fist connecting with my jaw. My head snapped back. Stars exploded in my vision. I dropped the tire iron. Hunter scrambled on top of me. He blinked furiously, tears streaming from his irritated eyes, clearing the powder just enough to see my shape. He grabbed my throat with both hands. "Die!" He snarled, spitting blood and white dust. "Just die, you stubborn old mule." His thumbs pressed into my windpipe. He squeezed. I clawed at his hands, but my left arm was useless and my right hand was slippery with sweat. I couldn't break his grip. The world started to go gray at the edges. I couldn't breathe. I stared up at his face, his twisted mask of hatred, and I knew this was it. This was how I died. Not in a hospital bed like Esther, but on the floor of a hallway fighting a devil. I thought of Jasmine. I thought of Leo. I had failed them. I had come so close. The darkness crept in closer. The sounds of the alarms faded. I stopped struggling. My lungs burned. And then I saw movement behind Hunter. A shape rose from the floor. It was a woman. She was swaying, holding her side where she had been kicked. She was bruised. She was bleeding, but she was standing. Patricia. She held a heavy crystal vase in her hands. It was the vase Jasmine had bought for her anniversary. Patricia didn't scream. She didn't hesitate. She raised the vase high above her head. For the boy. She whispered. She brought it down with every ounce of strength she had left. The vase shattered against the back of Hunter's head. It was a sickening crunch. Hunter's eyes rolled back. His grip on my throat loosened instantly. He slumped forward, his dead weight crushing my chest. I gasped, sucking in air that tasted of chemical powder and victory. I shoved his body off me. I rolled over, coughing, wheezing, trying to get oxygen back into my starved brain. Patricia dropped to her knees beside me. Her face was a mask of blood and tears. "Mr. Elijah," she sobbed. "You came back." I reached out and took her hand. We sat there in the ruined hallway covered in white dust, two broken soldiers who had just slain the dragon. I looked down the hall toward Leo's room. The door was open. Leo was standing there. He was unharmed. He was clutching Major Bear. He looked at Hunter's unconscious body, then he looked at me. "Grandpa," he whispered. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't work. I dragged myself toward him. "I am here, Leo," I rasped. "I am here." Suddenly the house was flooded with blue and red lights again, but this time they weren't coming for me. I heard voices downstairs, shouting, heavy boots pounding up the stairs. "Police! Drop your weapons!" I looked toward the stairs. Harrison was there. He was leading a team of officers, but not just the local police. These officers wore jackets that said State Police. Harrison had called in a favor. He had gone over the head of the local precinct. He had brought the cavalry. Harrison saw me lying on the floor bleeding. He ran to me, kneeling down, his face pale. "Elijah, stay with me. The medics are coming." I pointed a shaking finger at Hunter. "Check his pockets," I whispered. "Check the needle." One of the state troopers rolled Hunter over. He patted him down. He pulled out the silver case. He opened it. The syringe was still there intact. "Secure the evidence," the trooper shouted. "We have a weapon!" Harrison looked at me, tears standing in his eyes. "You did it, Elijah. You crazy old fool. You did it." I looked at Leo. Patricia was holding him now, rocking him back and forth. He was safe. The monster was down. The poison was secured. I closed my eyes. The pain in my shoulder was a dull roar now. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me cold and empty. But as I drifted into the darkness of unconsciousness, I felt a warmth on my hand. I opened my eyes one last time. Leo was holding my fingers. "You are the strongest grandpa in the world," he said. I squeezed his hand. "I am not strong, kid," I thought as the darkness took me. "I am just a dinosaur, and dinosaurs protect their own." The chaos in the bedroom was a symphony of shouting voices and crackling radios, but through the noise I heard the voice of the devil, and it was singing a song of victimhood. Hunter Vance was on his knees with his hands raised above his head, but his spirit was not broken. He was bleeding from the nose where Patricia had struck him, and his eyes were red and swollen from the fire extinguisher powder, but his mouth was moving with the speed and precision of a machine gun. "Officer, thank God you are here," Hunter shouted, his voice cracking with a perfect imitation of hysterical relief. "You have to help me. These people are insane. My father-in-law has completely lost his mind. He drove a truck through my living room. He broke into my house with a weapon. And this woman, this nanny I hired to protect my son, she was in on it. She tried to kidnap the boy." I sat slumped against the wall, clutching my bleeding shoulder, watching him work. It was a masterclass in manipulation. He looked at the state troopers with pleading eyes, the very picture of a terrified father who had just defended his home from intruders. "Look at the gun," Hunter cried, pointing to the weapon lying on the floor. "It is hers. She brought it. She threatened to kill my son if I didn't give her money. I had to fight her. I had to protect Leo. And then that crazy old man came crashing in and attacked me. I am the victim here. I am the one who called for help." Harrison was standing over me, pressing a compress to my wound. He looked at Hunter, then he looked at me. His face was pale. "Elijah, he is spinning it," Harrison whispered. "He is twisting everything. And the local cops know him. They want to believe him." I looked over at Officer Miller, the young local cop who had arrested me earlier. He was nodding along with Hunter's story, looking at me with disgust. I told you, Miller spat at me. I told you to stay away. Now look what you have done. You could have killed that little boy. Hunter saw the doubt in the room. He saw that the narrative was shifting in his favor. He seized the moment. "Search her," Hunter yelled, pointing at Patricia, who was sitting on the floor holding Leo. "Search the nanny. She is wearing a wire. She was recording me for blackmail. She is a criminal." A trooper stepped forward and pulled the torn cardigan from Patricia's shoulders. The wire was exposed. The battery pack dangled loosely. And the button camera, the lens that was supposed to be our salvation, lay crushed on the hardwood floor. It had been stomped on. The plastic was shattered. The memory card inside was likely dust. Hunter saw the broken device and a smile flickered across his face. It was quick, barely a twitch of the lips, but I saw it. It was the smile of a man who realized he had destroyed the only evidence against him. "See," Hunter said, his voice dropping to a tragic whisper. "She was taping me, planning to extort me, and when I caught her, she attacked. Officer, please get that dangerous man out of my house. I need to take my son to a safe place." The room went quiet. The state troopers looked uncertain. The evidence of the wire did look suspicious. And I was the one who had driven a truck through the wall. On the surface, it looked exactly like a violent home invasion. Harrison gripped my good hand. "Elijah, tell them. Tell them about the debt. Tell them about the poison." I took a deep breath. My lungs rattled. The pain in my shoulder was a dull throb, now overshadowed by a cold, clear clarity. I pushed Harrison's hand away. I didn't need a doctor. I needed an audience. I coughed, clearing the blood from my throat. "You are very good, Hunter," I rasped. My voice was weak, but it carried through the silent room. "You are the best liar I have ever met. You almost had me convinced." Hunter glared at me. "Save your breath, old man. You are going to prison for the rest of your life." I chuckled. It was a dry, painful sound. "You stepped on the camera," I said, pointing to the crushed plastic on the floor. "You saw it and you destroyed it. You thought that was checkmate." I slowly raised my right hand, my good hand, and pointed a trembling finger across the room. I wasn't pointing at Hunter. I wasn't pointing at the police. I was pointing at the bookshelf in the corner. "But you forgot something, Hunter," I said. "I am an engineer. I designed bridges that carry millions of tons of steel. Do you know the first rule of engineering?" Hunter stared at me, his brow furrowing. "Redundancy," I whispered. "Always have a backup system." I looked at Leo, who was still clinging to Patricia. "Leo, son," I said gently. "Where is Major Bear?" Leo sniffled. He reached down beside him. He picked up the golden-brown teddy bear with the red ribbon. The bear I had given him days ago. The bear Hunter had dismissed as a cheap dust collector. The trooper looked at the bear, then at me. "Check the left eye," I said. Hunter's face went white. It wasn't a gradual fade. It was instant. The blood drained from his skin, leaving him looking like a wax figure. He knew. In that split second, he remembered the bear. He remembered me bringing it. He remembered mocking it. "No," Hunter whispered. Officer Miller grabbed the bear from Leo. He looked into the left eye. He saw the glint of the lens. He turned the bear over and ripped open the Velcro seam in the back. He pulled out the battery pack. He pulled out the SD card. "It is a camera," Miller said, his voice filled with disbelief. "It is recording right now." Hunter lunged. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. The animal trapped in the corner simply reacted. He threw himself at Officer Miller, clawing for the bear, clawing for the card. "Give it to me," he screamed. "It is mine." 3 state troopers were on him instantly. They slammed him to the floor. This time, they weren't gentle. This time, they didn't see a victim. They saw a desperate man trying to destroy evidence. Handcuffs clicked. Hunter was pinned, his face pressed against the floorboards. "Play it," I said. My voice was stronger now, fueled by the sweet taste of victory. "Play it for everyone to hear." Harrison pulled a laptop from his medical bag. He took the card from Officer Miller. He inserted it. The room waited. The only sound was Hunter's heavy breathing and the clicking of keys. Then the audio filled the room. It was clear. It was undeniable. It started with the sound of the door locking. Then Hunter's voice, calm and cold. "Is he out?" Then the sound of the syringe case opening. Then the confession. The words that would bury him. "Don't start getting a conscience now, Patricia. You have your money. Just stand there and keep watch." And then the line that made the state trooper's jaw drop. He looks like her. He acts like her. And he is expensive like her. Harrison turned the laptop screen around so the police captain could see. The video was perfect. It showed Hunter standing by the bed. It showed the syringe in his hand, the light glinting off the lethal liquid. It showed him pulling back the duvet to expose Leo's foot. Then it showed the confrontation. It showed Hunter attacking Patricia. It showed him pulling the gun, screwing on the silencer. And then the final nail in the coffin. Change of plans. We aren't doing the allergy accident anymore. Being the heroic father had to shoot you to stop you. The video ended with the sound of my truck crashing into the house. Silence descended on the room. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. The kind of silence that happens when the truth is so ugly it sucks the air out of the room. The police captain looked down at Hunter. His face was hard as stone. "You have the right to remain silent," the captain said, his voice dripping with contempt. "But I suggest you start praying because you are going to need it." Hunter didn't pray. He didn't cry. He lifted his head from the floor and looked at me. His eyes were dead. There was no more charm, no more mask, just the empty void of a sociopath who had been caught. "You ruin everything," he hissed at me. "You are a dinosaur, Elijah. You should have just died." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had tormented my daughter, who had tried to murder my grandson, who had underestimated me at every turn. I smiled. It was a smile of pure, grim satisfaction. "Dinosaurs have thick skin, Hunter," I said, "and we have very big teeth." "Take him away," the captain ordered. They dragged him out. He didn't walk with his head high this time. He was dragged kicking and screaming, his expensive shoes scuffing the floor he had planned to sell. Patricia looked at me across the room. She was holding Leo tight. Her face was swollen, her lip was split, but she was smiling. It was the most beautiful smile I had ever seen. "We did it, Mr. Elijah," she whispered. I leaned my head back against the wall. The pain in my shoulder finally caught up with me. The darkness was creeping in at the edges of my vision again. But this time it wasn't the darkness of despair, it was the darkness of rest. The engineer had fixed the bridge, the foundation was safe. Harrison was saying something about an ambulance, he was checking my pulse. I didn't care. I closed my eyes and listened to the sound of sirens fading into the distance, taking the monster away. I was Elijah Thorne. I was 70 years old, and I had just won the war. The flashing lights of the police cruisers eventually faded into the night, but the image of Hunter Vance being shoved into the back of a squad car remained burned into my memory forever. They didn't treat him like a business executive this time. They didn't treat him like a pillar of the community. They treated him like exactly what he was, a dangerous criminal who had attempted to murder his own child for an insurance payout. The list of charges was long and satisfying. Attempted murder, aggravated assault, insurance fraud, child endangerment. The state prosecutor assured me that Hunter would never see the outside of a prison cell again. He would spend the rest of his life in a concrete box where his money and his charm meant absolutely nothing. The real victory, however, was not seeing Hunter in handcuffs. It was the drive to St. Jude's Behavioral Health Center the next morning. I had the court order in my hand, signed by a judge who was horrified by the evidence we had uncovered. The doctors there were hesitant at first, but when I showed them the toxicology report Harrison had run on the pills and the beet juice mixture, their arrogance crumbled into shame. They had been drugging my daughter based on the word of a liar. I waited in the lobby for an hour that felt like a lifetime. When the double doors finally opened and a nurse wheeled Jasmine out, my heart broke and healed all at the same time. She was thin. Her skin was pale and her eyes were still a little glassy from the withdrawal, but when she saw me the fog lifted. She didn't see snakes. She didn't see monsters. She saw her father. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice raspy and weak. "You came back for me." I fell to my knees beside her wheelchair and wrapped my arms around her. I buried my face in her shoulder and let the tears fall freely. I promised her I would never let anyone hurt her again. I promised her that the nightmare was over. And when we brought her home to my house, not the cold fortress on the hill, but the warm, cluttered house she grew up in, Leo was waiting on the porch. The way he ran to her, the way she scooped him up despite her weakness, burying her face in his neck, was the only payment I would ever need for the war I had fought. 6 months have passed since that night. The seasons have changed, turning the leaves from green to gold, and the air has turned crisp and cool. But inside my backyard, the air is warm with the smell of hickory smoke and barbecue sauce. I stand at the grill flipping ribs, my apron stained with grease, my bad shoulder aching just a little bit with the change in weather. But it is a good ache. It is a reminder that I am alive. Across the yard, Leo is running through the grass chasing a golden retriever puppy we adopted last week. He is laughing. It is a loud, uninhibited sound that rings through the neighborhood. He doesn't look over his shoulder anymore. He doesn't flinch when adults walk into the room. He is just a boy, a happy 5-year-old boy who knows he is safe. Jasmine is sitting at the picnic table. She looks like a different person. The weight is back on her frame and her hair shines in the sunlight. She is shelling peas and talking to Harrison, who is laughing at something she said. She is managing her own trust fund now. She sold the big house, the Fortress of Lies, and used the money to start a graphic design business. She is strong. She is the daughter Esther and I raised. And then there's Patricia. She isn't wearing a floral uniform today. She is wearing a bright yellow sundress, and she is sitting at the head of the table, commanding the potato salad distribution like a general. She isn't the help. She isn't the nanny. She is family. She lives in the guest cottage behind my house now. We realized that Leo needed her, and frankly, I needed her too. She is the sister I never had, the partner in crime who saved my legacy. I look at this scene, this patchwork family stitched together by trauma and love, and I feel a peace so deep it touches my soul. I turn the meat on the grill and look out at the setting sun. I think about the lessons I have learned in my 70 years on this earth. I spent my life building structures, calculating loads, believing that if you followed the rules, the building would stand. I believed that success looked a certain way. I believed that evil looked a certain way. I was wrong. I look at the empty space where Hunter used to be. He was the picture of success. He was white. He was wealthy. He was educated. He wore the right suits and said the right things. Society looked at him and saw a hero. The police looked at him and saw a victim. But underneath the polish, he was a monster rotting from the inside out. And then I look at Patricia. Society looked at her and saw a poor black woman from the bottoms. They saw a woman with a rough past, a woman who took the bus, a woman who didn't matter. But underneath that worn cardigan beat the heart of a warrior. She was the one who stood between a needle and a child. She was the one who risked everything for a boy who wasn't hers. The world wants to tell us who to trust based on zip codes and bank accounts. The world wants us to believe that the man in the mansion is good and the woman in the alley is bad. But I learned the hard way that the truth is not found in appearances. It is found in actions. It is found in the choices we make when the lights go out and no one is watching. Hunter Vance chose greed. Patricia chose love. And I chose to fight. I take the ribs off the grill and walk toward the table. "Hey, Grandpa," Leo shouts, running toward me. "Is it time to eat?" "It is time, little pilot," I say, ruffling his hair. I set the platter down. Patricia looks up at me and winks. Jasmine smiles, a genuine smile that reaches her eyes. I am Elijah Thorne. I am a retired engineer. I am a dinosaur. And looking around this table, I realize that being a dinosaur isn't so bad. It means you are a survivor. It means you are tough. And it means you know how to protect the things that truly matter. Family isn't just blood. It is the people who bleed for you. And looking at my family, I know that no matter what storms come next, our foundation is solid. We built it on the truth, and truth is the strongest material on earth. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to fight for the ones you love, let me know in the comments below. Tell me about the unexpected angels in your life. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice and redemption. Until next time, protect your pack and never let anyone tell you that you are too old to make a difference. In my 70 years, I learned to calculate the strength of steel, but I failed to measure the true strength of the human heart until now. I judged Hunter by his tailored suit and Patricia by her address, and I was nearly dead wrong. The greatest lesson I learned is that integrity has no zip code. True nobility isn't found in a bank account or a country club membership. It is found in the courage to stand between a predator and a child. We must look past the surface because sometimes the devil wears a silk suit and the guardian angel wears worn-out shoes. Family isn't defined by whose blood runs in your veins, but by who is willing to bleed for you when the darkness comes. If you have ever been saved by an unexpected hero, or if you believe that justice is worth fighting for, no matter your age, please share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories about truth, redemption, and the fight for what is right. Stay safe and keep your eyes open.